Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight as Antified presents Talking Shhh I.T with Glenn and Tony. And just so you know, this show has a full disclaimer. It is highly educational. You know it. So you better go ahead, grab your Googles and your notepads, pens or pencils, which I prefer, and get ready to talk some shh tonight here with Tony as we go ahead and share the show. Go, go, go.
I'm still trying to figure out where my Googles are.
Check it, the last place that you think you put them.
Oh my God, it's on my head.
Told you so.
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about song arrangement and different types of song arrangement approaches. And we're going to have a couple of people on here showing some of their arrangements and their approaches. But before we get started, just to get the seats filled in and warmed up, I'm going to play one of my favorite arrangements from our favorite hostess. And I think this is a good one to show good arranging skills.
I know we can show our children a better future, one that we would all understand, one that would join us all together in every part, in every land. Our children deserve a better life, to respect and love one another. Oh, let's do it for the children of tomorrow. Take away all the hurt and sorrow. Let's do it for the children of tomorrow. Give them the guidance to follow. I know we can show our children a better future, one that was right and wrong, a new beginning, a new adventure. Show them the ways to be strong. Our children deserve a better life, to respect and love one another. Let's do it for the children of tomorrow. Do it for the children and give them the guidance to light their way. Give them the guidance to light their way. Let's do it for the children of tomorrow. And take away all the hurt and the sorrow. Take it all away. Let's do it for the children. Do it for the children. And give them the guidance to follow.
I'm so used to Ange coming in after that with, oh yeah, welcome to Whip It Out Wednesday, although it's Thursday. But that is one of my favorite pieces of hers that we use a lot on this show because it really represents um, a lot of her mission, a lot of our mission. And it really does have fantastic arrangement in it. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, arranging songs. It's not enough. Well, music making is not just about playing an instrument. Um, Arranging is a big part of writing a song. You know, after you get done coming up with a part, some words, um, when you have the pieces, the next step to that song coming to light is how you approach the arrangement of that song. And it can be arranging the parts themselves, the instruments that you layer and build up, or, you know, vocal melodies and how they incorporate with the music. All of that is different types of arrangement. If we take a look here, I was kind of doing some research earlier just on what Google thinks song arrangement is. And
Does that mean that my ankle goes on top of my elbow?
well, if you can arrange it there,
It's the new math.
you're triple jointed, huh?
That's my threes.
So looking at, song arrangement coming from Google's perspective, a couple of these sites are definitely interesting ones to go check out. And I really like this first one because the way that they break things down here, I believe this is hyperbits.com. And um, when you look at the way that they kind of break it down and suggest approaches to arrangement, this is what I like of their advice here. These are the three different approaches that you'll do when you're arranging a song. You know, the flow is like why you typically might have a verse, a bridge, a chorus, back to a verse, back to a bridge, a chorus, a solo, an outro. Um, that's all part of the flow. And depending on how you do it, it's the difference between a hit or a miss when it comes to songwriting. It's the most important part before you get into these other two areas. You know, voicing is where you take those parts and how you've laid them out and start to think of how you're going to layer in your instrumentation, background vocals. Um, Voicing is really where you start to polish that arrangement that you started with the flow. And then, of course, like, the mix, that's where you listen and you see how it blends and you adjust until till that arrangement feels right, till everything falls into place. So I think this is a good way to look at arranging this three-layer approach. So I would definitely recommend people check out this Hyperbits article and see what their suggestions are on approaching these kinds of things. You know, how to go about the voicing with the instruments, and you know, the flow structure, and decide whether you're going to follow traditional approaches or you're going to go out of the box and come up with something different. I mean, once in a while, you'll hear a song that comes in with the chorus and then goes into a verse, and it might throw off a listener at first, but when it's done right, it can make a song that really stands out to some people, because you don't typically hear songs start that way. So it sometimes how you arrange can really help you be a distinct sounding artist. It can help you define your own sound that way. Oh, Kiefer. Hey, speaking of, good timing, because yours is one that like got me thinking earlier today of good examples. And one of the tracks you sent me has a very nice arrangement in it. Actually, I think I have it loaded here. Yes. Oop, did I close it? Let me get that back. But this is a good example of layered buildup in an arrangement, and it shows you that you don't need to do you don't have to have tons of part changes and constantly keep the listener guessing to have a great arrangement. This is one of those nice ambient type of pieces that builds up and flows throughout, and the arrangement itself is what keeps it flowing throughout. And if you listen as the instruments get introduced, how they come in, how they go out, and all the way through the track, this is some great arranging. See, and that's a nice example of instrument arranging. Like, you don't have to have a lot of parts, can keep a consistent mood through the whole thing. And what gives it the changes is the different instruments as they move throughout the song. The mood changes as the instruments take the front for a little while and then pull back. The relationship between the guitar and the rhythm, every little nuance there just blends beautifully. Pat, great to see you. Actually, I had one of yours in there for an arrangement example too. Again, great timing. Oh, and actually this one, part 10, you guys got to check this out. Pat has a epic story of Bigfoot. And with this one, like, storytelling falls into part of the arrangement process. I'm gonna have to go through your whole 10, Pat.
Yeah. My name is Smoking. This song's about Bigfoot's dead.
Like, does anybody know the way to the stage? It's
Bigfoot's crying
like I can't find my way. It's all
all out
dark.
in the forest.
What's that? What's that noise?
Fucking mad about something I don't fucking know. Here's John Travolta.
Like smoky and everything. It's so weird and everything. I can't even believe you're out here in the forest. What the hell's going on there?
Oh, fuck yeah, boy, yeah. Shut up, Johnny.
Hey,
Don't learn the fucking song.
but why is he crying and everything's so weird and everything? I'm just over here and he's over there and you're over here.
Bigfoot's crying. Oh, fuck yeah.
I don't even know what's up
Yeah,
between.
out in the forest, I'm fucking mad about it.
He's like,
Shut
yeah,
the fuck up, Johnny.
sorry.
I wish John Travolta would just shut the fuck up.
Like, that's very rude and everything. It's kinda unfortunate that you would even bring that up right now and everything in front of everyone and stuff. It's just so weird and everything. Oh my god.
And throw his ass to the ground. I know I can't do that to fuck you, Johnny.
Oh my god and everything. Everybody, how's it going out there in music land and everything? I guess this is like
Out in the forest, all fucking
Bigfoot's out
mad
there all
about
in the
shit.
forest all fucking taking a shit or something. So weird.
That's right. Father Pat McGroin. Oh, yeah.
Hello everyone.
Can see you too, buddy. Fuck out.
Why am I
Shut
here?
up, Johnny.
Like, I wasn't even
We're not
talking
flying
to
a
some.
fucking airplane right at shore.
Shut the fuck up, Smokey. I don't even like you. We're not friends. I'm gonna go be like Kitty Rogers' friend. Something weird. Stuff and everything. I can't even believe that you would still be talking and everything. It's so strange that, like, I'm a figment of your imagination. Imagination landed. Everybody's imaginating. Like, that's a log dragger over there and everything, which is a weird thing, 'cause I made that up myself and everything. This might be the Ballad of Bigfoot Stick Part 10.
Holding a guitar and using his dick.
Like, I can't control Smokey anymore, he's on his own and everything.
All out in the forest, all fucking mad about it.
Sounds like he's mad about it.
Fucking song. Oh, Bigfoot. I wish you'd shut the fuck up, John.
Like, that's so weird and everything.
I can't
That's
even
very hurtful,
kill
Mr.
this.
Smokey. Like, when I get your ass on the plane, I'm gonna put you in the ashtray and
This is
sick
the
your shit.
planet of
money. At the end of the day, college and everything so fucking weird and stuff. Oh my god. Bigfoot's crying. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you for making. Father Pat McGroin, everyone. Telling it like it is with Bigfoot. See, and again, when you look at these different types of arrangement structures and how to approach them, um, the voicing there, this, the flow was kind of established just with a nice kind of blues country groove, and with that flow, the the real master arranging there was all voicing. That's a big skill of Pat's when it comes to how he does his vocal tracks. All right, let me see if I can get this loaded 2K and we'll take a listen to it. And we'll see how your arranging approach is. And I'd like to say, there is no wrong way to arrange in music. It's one of those things that it's all about approach. There's certain ways that work really well. It's like, just like if you use certain chords, they always sound good together. Certain arrangement approaches just work. A verse, bridge, chorus recipe. This is what, a big chunk of commercial music is made with. But finding different arrangement approaches will help you become a distinct artist, because the distinct artists don't just always follow that same old recipe. So what do we got here? A free narco beat. So you're a beat maker, 2K, right? Wow, very good arranging. And if you're doing this at 12, you're on your way. There's some really cool stuff in there. I like the sounds you picked. I like the mood that you gave it. You set the flow up just in your patch choice and your initial beat, and the way that you shifted, especially at the end of these tails here, these parts, really cool shift as you brought it back to the theme, and especially here at the end, going towards like a BPM shift like that. Uh, Threw me off at first, but at the same time, it didn't throw me off in a bad way. It was like, the listener can hear when a BPM shifts, when a tempo shifts. A listener feels that even if they don't know what's going on, but it can work really effectively. The way that you kind of used it as an outro um, is very effective. That's a great way to do an arrangement. You kind of got both parts here. You got your intro and you got your outro here at the end, and how you filled this in the middle. Fantastic work. I can see some people jumping on that and forking it and coming up with some great lyrics to put on top of it. So if any of you listening there, you can find him at Sad Boy Narco, 2K21 type hits. I just followed him myself. I want to see what else you got. Thanks for sharing that, 2K. And a nice example of both traditional arranging and untraditional arranging with your outro. I like it. And speaking of untraditional arranging, I do have an example of one of my old tunes. This is one of the most untraditional approaches that I had to a song, where it's like a 4-part song. It does have a verse and it does have a chorus and a bridge, but it also has an alternate part just for a complete total mood shift. And the purpose of the alternate part was to kind of throw off the listener, because the subject of the song is well, it's about drinking and it's about disorientation and kind of losing it. And the music was meant to kind of sound like that feeling of things getting chaotic and out of control.
Told my life to change.
intense.
Looking for
Ah,
looking for royalty-free music? Discover
those YouTube ads, they take over. Little
I can't stand
Raj,
them.
our
And
own
then
little
they
Raj.
want to charge you to get rid of them. Like they'll people these days, man.
They should be paying me to even watch them.
Because most of them are just they're mind numbing to watch.
Well, they
They're
are
not even
getting to know me. Like most of my ads are like video effects plugin sites, music plugin sites, music software. So clearly Google knows me.
I shared that track with you. I do believe I sent it to you as a let's see, how did I send that to you? I shared it with you and as a message. Do you want me to put it in the chat for you, or
No, I can see it. I got it here.
okay, cool, good deal, good deal.
So that last track, that's one of my old songs that I wrote with my not my high school band, but the last band that I was in back in my younger days,
Yeah,
and that was the song where I was trying to come up with that different. I didn't want to just do a verse, bridge, chorus song. You know, I wanted it to. I wanted it to kind of do things backwards. The chorus is a one line chorus, you know, start thinking again,
okay,
like that is the chorus, which typically, you know, your choruses are meant to be the catchy part, they're meant to
right,
be, you know, longer.
right,
Here, I wanted a short, boom in your face chorus, and the bridge, you know, typical bridge, you build it up, you know, build up to that one line. And
right.
the verse was the theme that I wanted at the beginning and I wanted going into the outro, because to me the outro there was basically a second intro. You know, the purpose of this
Right,
outro
right.
was meant to like feel like you're right back at the beginning of the song.
I hear you. I hear you. And that's actually pretty cool. And it's almost like the part one of this track that I sent you, because the track that I sent you is the second part of the two part song, and the first part of the song
Oh, you
is
you broke
done.
the song up into parts?
Yeah, the first song is an acoustic version with a slightly different choreography during the bridge and stuff like that. It's because it breaks down into a finger picking kind of like a Spanish sounding kind of deal, and this one is the electric version that it doesn't do that, but it breaks into the same chords and it breaks into the same progression, but it does it in a basically a heavy metal style manner. Whereas instead of picking finger picking, that
You up
progression,
the mood.
I'm I'm palm muting at speed with distortion, but it's the same progression, and it makes for an entirely different beast because it the part two, this version right here, this one this one pretty much gets after it like once that bridge kicks in. But the acoustic version, that one, it really does a good job of decrescendoing and then kind of just open up dither style space for a split second, and then it comes in at a reduced tempo, and but the whole time it's actually the same tempo, but I'm playing it literally half time, then I go back to double time, and they're you when you hear them both next to one another, you can clearly tell they're differently, they are organized different,
Yeah,
but you
isn't
can
it funny?
also
You can be
tell.
playing the same chords, maybe different time on the chords, change the instrument sound. All you got to do is change it a little bit, and all of a sudden, it's like a whole new song.
Just a little bit, and it changes everything. It does, because I know recording this version with the second part, the recording, I spent last year beating my brains up against the wall trying to get it right, and then about 3 months ago I was like, dude, what are you doing? I was like, son, sit down, hit record, play your parts, hit stop, and mix this damn song down. Be done with it. And so I was like,
those
okay, let's
those
do that.
moments of clarity and refinement where it's like,
Yeah,
okay, and
yeah.
now I'm ready to do it.
And it came out the way it was supposed to. The whole time, what I had intended is actually what popped out. Just because I finally got down to business on it, because you know as well as any musician how bad we can procrastinate ourselves
Yeah.
into more procrastination, trying to aim for something whenever we either don't have the actual aim to know what we're actually going for,
What
or
there's the key.
sometimes.
I A lot of times when those songs keeps swimming in the back of my head, it's because I still haven't figured out what it is I want out of that song.
Yeah, because if you're not happy with it in your head, you're not done with it. You're
Well,
like, that's just my that's
if it doesn't sound like it, I hear it in my head, I don't tend to be happy with it. I like
right.
surprises, like, oh, I didn't expect it to sound like this, but I'm always trying to reach that sound that because I
That you act that
orchestrate in my head.
Yeah, that you envision whenever the whole idea comes to you, definitely, because I enjoy writing while I'm recording sometimes, but you of all people know better than most. That's one of the most potentially time consuming and rabbit hole leading methods of
Yeah.
getting your music
That's
down
why I
that
have
there
a
is.
27-year-old song still.
Thank
It's
you,
still
because
not
I've
done.
yeah, because I've got a few that are probably 25 years old, and there's probably two or three of them that are about that age, and I don't have any hurry. I'm not in any hurry to finish them because I know that they're not done yet.
Yeah, I've actually written other songs based on that song, but I haven't finished that song.
Do you ever get the feeling that you're going to eventually write a song based on that song to the point to where you end up writing so much that could have been in it that it almost becomes pointless to,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
it's like, damn, now it's not the same song.
either that, or you end up being happy with what came close to it and you're like, wow, this is actually, I think I like this better. And that's actually
Yeah,
a
and that's
surprisingly
evolution.
satisfying feeling. Yeah.
Exactly. If that
That,
happens, I feel like the song evolved, and
and
I'm
I'm
cool
kind
with
of,
that.
yeah, I'm proud of those moments, because it's, for one, you're obviously proud of it because you're like, finally, I've reached the end point on it, but also because of the evolution. And that's always that's the one of the most rewarding parts for me, is when I'm writing while I'm recording, is the evolution, because yeah, your song's gonna change if that's how you're doing it,
Oh,
in that particular.
especially when you're working with others. That's
Oh yeah,
where I'm the happiest to see evolution. When you are working with others, expect surprises.
yeah,
Expect more than what you hear in your head, because
and
that's what it
embrace it.
takes to work with
And
others.
you got to embrace it too. That's the big thing with working with others, because I know
Well,
there's a lot of
that's also
musicians.
why you want to find others that you can be happy with their sound, that you feel like you're on the same channel. The
Right,
trickiest part with BandLab is it kind of feels like sometimes I'm being forced to be in bands with people that I would have never been in a band with in real life, because in real life, the only people I ever jammed with every week were those like-minded creative spirits, the ones
yeah,
that, like, you like the same kind of music I do, we play the same kind of way, in real life, musicians tend to find other musicians that complement them. The
yeah,
band lab
yeah.
approach is
My
cool.
imagination
She got my
with
imagination.
creativity.
See, she's one that I can like-minded jam with.
And the crazy part is I think me and her have done what one we've worked on one track together and still hasn't been finished yet. And then the one that, like, we wanted you on, you were like, no, you guys, like, there's nothing I'm gonna do to that. And I'm like, oh no, I'm like, and because the whole time I was just goofing around while I was doing my recording part of it, and I think so was Luke. And she was like, "Man, you guys just, like, y'all kicked the butt on that, because it was real kind of
Yeah,
just funky,
when
noisy
something
jam."
sounds good, the worst thing you can do, especially if you're mixing or doing anything like that, engineering, is feel like you have to do something to something that doesn't need some, anything done to it. It's
Yes, sir.
hard as an engineer to say, like, this is the sweet spot. I don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah, like don't touch anything else. Yeah, just
Stop.
because
Drop.
it's hard to and roll.
Oh, I thought she was going to do In the Name of Love. Oh, is that a Glenn I see?
It is a
Glenn
Glenn.
made it.
Hello, sir.
It's
Hello,
great to
senor.
see you.
Hello, hello.
Likewise, brother.
I might be a little
Likewise.
loud. Let me check that.
No, no, you sound good.
Man,
Alright,
you
cool.
ain't never lied. You always just right. You know that.
Ah, just right.
And
Not too hot, not too cold.
just right timing. We're going to check out this track from Raj, and
Yeah, yeah.
like I said yesterday, we're going over arrangement and different approaches, different
Yep.
ways to slap things together.
While I was getting my
And
stuff set up over here, I definitely heard the end of that last one you did there. Very cool. You said that was from the band that you were working with previously.
Yeah, that was we called it the X Factory because that
Nice.
was the name of the studio we were building. So
Mhm.
technically the band didn't have a name. It was just my studio band.
Yeah.
But
And just like Kiefer said, you can definitely over tinker a song to death. That's one of those that always got me is like, you just little change here, little change there. You can go down that rabbit hole for hours. And it's like, wait, now it doesn't even sound like the same song anymore. It's like, now let's go back to where we were 3 hours ago and just make one change. Okay, now what does that sound like? You know,
and then you become the
uncomplicated.
victim to your own. Then you become the victim to your own Stockholm syndrome.
Yep, exactly.
well,
you
the
are
more
your own captor at that
the
point.
more you do it, the easier it gets to not over tinker.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I was a tinkerer. Was trying to learn the software, trying to learn the effects, any excuse to like try something and throw things in. As you do it more and more and you start to get your polished approach, you realize when you're over tinkering and you're not trying to slap a bunch of layers onto something just for the sake of.
Yeah, and it doesn't take very long to realize you're over tinkering. The more you get, the more you
Well,
do
if
it,
you can
because
hear it.
yeah, it's like because sometimes you'll be like maybe just one more compressor, maybe just one more limiter, and you're like, oh no, whoa, no, I know
Yeah,
better than
and
that.
see,
Let me
that's
just let
where
me back
I'm
this off
extra
and get
careful.
back to business.
When it comes to like adding compression or something to a track, these days I'm always asking myself, why am I adding compression to this
Yeah,
Exactly.
track?
does it need?
If I
Does
don't
it
have an
need?
answer,
Yeah,
then I'm not adding compression to that track because if I don't know why I'm doing it, it's
likewise.
it's one thing to try it to see if it
Mhm.
does fix a track,
Right.
but I'm not sold that I need it just because a web page said, "Oh, this is how you make a better
Right.
mix."
Mhm.
I need to
Yeah, you don't
hear
have
it.
that. You don't have that as a final step in your mind already to where you're gonna go there with it. It's like, no, if it needs it, I'll know it needs it because I know what there's still something missing. But if I don't hear anything missing, why would I bother?
Same
Why
thing
would I
happens with
fix something?
presets. It's
Oh
really
yeah,
easy to dive into like, oh, here's my preset. Like every time I sing, I use this, or every time I play guitar, I use that. Like sometimes some people get really locked into that. Here's my preset and I'm done. But it's great to have presets as a starting point, as a kickoff point. Like let's
Right.
listen to that, see how it works, and then you can adjust from there. But I got to the point where instead I just started doing the only thing I was going to put on as my default is just a slight bit of compression. And that was just because
Right.
sometimes when I'm playing my bass, I'm playing a little bit too quietly, or sometimes there's too much of a difference between the quiet notes and the
or
loud
you want to
notes.
tone
So,
down the resonance.
right.
If you got a splashy instrument and you want it to be a little tighter,
Mhm.
compression helps there.
Yep. And that's one of those where I'll just like, that'll be the only thing I'll throw on there, try it with nothing, try it with just that, see how that is, and then build from there.
And it really helps when you have like a default kind of sound that you start with. Like me, I almost always start with a piano just
Yeah.
because that's that's where I write. That's the most natural sound to feel with. If I start with other instrument sounds, it's kind of harder to get into my
Right.
pocket.
It
Hmm.
can definitely, yeah, because it leads you into a place of not necessarily unfamiliarity, but a place of, hold on, I'm not used to being on this part of the writing stage. It's like I'm used to being right here, so I like it, but I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go with it because
Yeah.
I know where I'm supposed to go with it if I were over on that side of the stage. You know,
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a
my
little easier
my
with bass because they
Mhm.
don't tend to like over affect basses.
Yeah.
But a guitarist, especially if they're like preset happy,
mm,
those
They could be all
presets
over the map.
change
Yeah.
your approach. They change your tone and completely
yeah.
put you in a new zone. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Yep.
I
And
find
keyboards
that
has lots of
most of the
options too.
time I find that most of the time presets for the guitars are not really the best of things because and it annoys the hell out of me. Don't get me wrong, because every mix I do for every song I do, I end up basically resetting the entire guitar EQ presets, effects, or anything I'm using. It's all coming from scratch again,
Yeah,
and
and if
it's
you're
like,
doing it right with the guitar, you should be able to play it clean. I-
yeah,
If
yeah,
you're laying down your guitar tracks nice and clean, you have a lot more power with those presets
oh yes
post
sir,
than you
yes
do
sir.
recording into the track. Recording
Well,
wet
and
affected guitar tracks
oh man,
is a
you got to
no
be
no in
yeah, you
my
got to be on your
studio.
game. You got to be Eddie Van Halen if you want to get that stuff right every time, because yeah, going in wet oh yeah, that's you leave yourself open to a lot of trouble down the road,
Yeah.
Mhm.
a lot. Because man, like you think you did a good job, and then you'll start noticing every time you hear it afterwards, you'll start hearing this one click from the strike of a pick onto a string or something, and you're like, I can't get rid of that.
Mhm.
Like it's
Yep.
there. Like there's nothing you can do unless you want to go back and retake the whole phrase. And a lot of the time, if you're like me, I usually do most of my solos either first or second take, so odds are I'm not gonna remember them immediately.
And that's where you tend to get the best solos. Solos are the
It's
kind of
fresh.
thing where
Yeah.
the first take sometimes is
The magic.
unmatchable.
General,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, like yeah, the ones you actually look in the mirror and go, "Wow, dude, that was cool." Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you actually don't mind pumping yourself a little bit for it, and it's like, "Yep," but you're not gonna remember it right off the bat, though. You're gonna have to actually go back and listen to it and hope you can actually capture that magic again. Because
Mhm.
sometimes, like, the magic is just in the emotion that's actually coming through you, and not even necessarily in the licks that you're playing. And when that happens, for me, it's extra difficult to recapture that magic because it was like that's a zen moment. Like
Yeah.
that's one moment in time that you're not
It was
going to
all about that
recreate.
moment. Yeah.
See, and
Yeah.
all of this is crucial to arrangement. Glenn, if you can see this, this is
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of the three arrangement approaches
Sure.
that Hyperbits suggested. I agree with them. Like,
Mhm.
the voicing, that's part of the preset arrangement, and
Mhm.
things like that, and actually also the soloing, and the flow and the mix, kind of nice sandwiches
Yeah.
between the voicing when it comes to how you arrange.
And the voicing is so important. I mean, whether it's the different instruments or even if it's just the different registers of a particular instrument and making sure to use everything and get everything to feel that nice full sound. You don't want
And
just all low and
where
just
you
high.
introduce that instrument, like,
Yeah.
are you doing a build up where you start with a single instrument and along the way
You start thickening it
more
up. Yeah. Yeah.
instruments come in
Mhm.
until all of a sudden you've got the song.
Mhm. Nice.
But we got Raj's Peace in the Pain Part
Nice.
2. Let's take a listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
that gets a big fuck yeah from me.
Yeah, me too, man. Absolutely.
I
Very cool.
actually
Thank you,
said it like
guys.
right as you were going into the outro, and you added that just extra chug going out. I said it out loud. I had to double check, see if my mic was muted.
Very
Thank you,
cool.
guys.
Hmm.
Thank
Yeah,
you. I
see,
appreciate it.
that is a good example. The guitar arrangement alone is fantastic, but
Thank
the
you.
blend between everything is is excellent.
I was very happy with it. I really was
Hmm.
because yeah, it came together nicely and very smoothly and seamlessly, and I was very happy with the total arrangement.
Yeah,
And
and you
we
took a
got
slick approach with you had like three different guitar parts coming in with different purposes. Like,
yeah
one was just kind of set in the chord mood, and then you came in with the distortion in two different ways and just kind of pushed the song in the direction that you were going.
Yeah, it covered a good spectrum there. It did because it started out with the guitar part being played more or less like a piano, and with that progression style especially. And then, like you said, once the second verse or I don't remember, yeah, the second verse kicked in, it had that almost old school like Scorpions uh, harmonizing guitar vibe, but
Oh
it still
yeah,
had
in the middle, your
yeah
choice of actually like kind of putting the glorious solo like in the middle there. Um, Again, that's out of the box arranging. In the old days, the solo was always like two-thirds into the song right before the outro. And,
right.
these days, solos can really fit anywheres if you're paying attention. You
Super
Yes,
you
frequent.
chose a good place to break up the song.
Hmm.
thank you. I appreciate that because, and I agree because, like you said, the after the solo, it's like a whole other song,
Yeah.
and it's just and it's grooving, and it's like man, that I love that part about that song because that I actually love playing the end part of the rhythm more than I like playing the solo by a long shot, just because it's so fun to just know where that groove is, where it's going, and where it's going to end up at, and knowing how fun it was to write and how fun it is to play. Because a lot of the times I'll tell myself I'm going to write something a lot more difficult to play. Then I'm like, why? What's the
Hmm.
point? Like, I mean, what am I trying to prove? I mean, I
Yeah.
know I can play some stupid fast stuff if I wanted to. Like, that's not really making music. That's kind of just being a jackass, if you ask me. It's
Yeah. The
like
question
because
is
I
why
mean,
you're doing it. Like you said, if it's something to serve the song, like if there's a song that needs that, that's one thing. But if you're just doing it to
right.
do it, then yeah.
Well, here
It's
you
like
almost get two songs for one.
Mhm.
Like you doubled your bang.
Mhm.
man, if you ever get around to it, check out part one of the song. I did send you the
Actually, I was
link
going to
for it.
ask you, where is part one? I kind of want
I
to check
did.
it out now.
I sent it to your to our I sent
Oh,
it
is it in
in
the chat?
as a as a,
Awesome.
as, as a as a message. No, as a message on BandLab.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
I see it.
Yeah, yeah. If y'all want to check it out, that'd be cool too. I would much appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
Hmm.
well, now is a good time to reference it. It's still fresh in my brain.
yes, very true. That's why I went ahead and hoarded myself out and was like, "Come on, Tony, maybe in case you want to check out the trend, the contrast."
Well, and I'm really curious to see the acoustic side of this. I think that's a great exercise for any songwriter. You should always try to make an acoustic version. If you're making a heavy song, make an acoustic version to explore what you're doing with that
well,
heavy
we'll
song.
see.
And if you're doing an acoustic song, think about making a heavy version just to see where those acoustics can go.
and that's exactly what I did with this one because this version right here is the original version. It was originally on the acoustic.
Yeah, see, I tend to start acoustic because, with the
Yep.
piano, it's like almost always feels like it's an acoustic song when I start, and
Yeah,
I try to pull it into other sounds and see
well, I
what it
mean,
would be like if it was rocked up.
you just
Mhm.
can't
Yep.
deny the power of the acoustic guitar, man. Like it'll get you started. It'll get your fires going, and it'll get you on your way every
And it'll
time.
pull those heartstrings too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll tell you what you really mean to do to that song. And then once you get the electric in your hands, you already know what you're supposed to be doing. So yeah, there's you can't go wrong with the acoustic. Not in my book.
Yep.
So these are single take live performances, huh?
Every bit of it. You know me, Tony. Everything I do is all from start to finish. Man, if I've missed the second to last drum beat, I'm gonna start the whole track over, and I'm gonna I
Yeah, I've
don't
been
copy and
there.
paste. I don't punch in. I don't. I know I should because it would be a mighty fine savior of time, but I figured, hey, if I can't play it then live every time, then why record it? You
To
know?
me, the big thing is how much more material would you be able to put out if you did do some punch-ins and some things like that, just in the
Yes,
spots where you
very.
did get 90-95% of the song right in the first shot.
You're
Like throwing that
absolutely
all away
right.
is kind of a shame.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
I never
There have
throw anything away. I
there
just put
have
it to
been
the side.
times whenever I've gotten 95% of the way and it was so perfect to where I was not going to throw it away. So rather than doing too much, I just hit the MIDI roll and just go from the bad part forward and just get rid of that. But yeah, I've never done any actual like programming of sequencing or anything. But like, yeah, if it's that close to it, I'll suck up my pride and I'll be like, nah, dude, just go back and punch in and knock that little part out because you sure are right about that, sir.
It also depends if it's like your fourth time through the whole thing. Like, the fourth time through the whole thing, you got
Yeah, you
70%, then
start
you got
losing the feeling.
74%. Now you're like, all right, let's get this part on lockdown and then move on. Yeah.
That's the
Yes,
danger of
sir.
too many takes, is that you will
Yes.
start
You,
to lose your groove.
oh yeah. Just like with vocals, guitars, anything, any instrument, you will get out of your zone, like because you get tired. You have your fatigue, and you at that point you're not really that creative anymore, and you want to be. You're still enthused, but you wore yourself out for the time being.
Yeah, the creative dynamics start to dilute
Yeah,
after
everything feels
after you feel
redundant.
like you're no longer practicing it, and now you're just playing it over and over again. You
Yeah.
you lose
Take
some of that energy.
74. Yeah.
Got that right, man. Yeah, I was the world's worst for the past 18 months about that.
Well, let's
Not
see
even
how
gonna
this
lie.
let's see how this does acoustically.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it. See, this is my 2-bar counting.
Wow, that is a total contrast to part
Wasn't it?
two.
Wasn't it though?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like two totally same song, but two totally different.
I would actually
Yeah,
use both, and I would
Mhm.
use them at different parts in the album.
Yep.
yeah, yeah,
It's like the wall, if you go through the whole album, there's themes that keep coming back throughout the album.
yep.
Hmm.
And that's
Revisiting.
definitely yep. And that's kind of what I had in mind for that one right there. Because, like I said, I wrote it acoustically, and so I knew I was never gonna want to let go of that finger picking part and all that stuff. But I also knew that I heard something else going on in my mind with the electric, and I was like, well, hell, let's just do
Well,
it.
yeah, and the part changes have a totally different flavor with the acoustic sound than they do with the electric, especially the outro.
Right,
Like the outro here has a softer shift for me, but it's a
right.
nice, pleasant one. It's like, oh, you can appreciate the melodic chords that you're using there.
Right, and and also I noticed it's probably easier for a lot of people to listen to as far as the anticipation factor because there's no unknowns left at that point, and it's kind of like a natural wind down to a song, and so it gives people their closure instead of a shocker or something else. You know what I mean? So and then once they get to go hear the other one, then they're like, oh wow, like that's pretty cool, like because two totally different endings.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed writing and recording both versions of that. And just like I was telling you, Tony, how I got to that day a couple months ago where I was like, dude, just hit record and get this thing done.
Yep.
I recorded both of those on the same day in the same like 2 hour session.
Nice.
Yes, yeah, because I've been working on them forever. It seemed like, and I think I had to clear out my terabyte on my OneDrive at least twice just
Oh,
because of
you got to keep those.
You gotta stay
Yeah,
on top of that. Yeah.
the music machine needs space because
yeah.
I'm running into that problem with mine. I'm below 90 gigs,
Oh
and
man, yeah.
Cakewalk really starts to get pukey when it doesn't have a good amount of scratch space, and Windows doesn't have its scratch space. Like now, I'm getting dropouts.
Oh
So
no.
until I clean off a good 30, 40, 120 gigs or more is the sweet spot. The equipment works great. Anytime it goes below that, trying to record, you get drop tracks and
Yeah,
they cut
yeah.
out.
I
And
know that about 3 months ago, I had to let go of probably 140 gigs worth of stuff just to get it out of there, and most of it was snapshots. And it's like, why does it seem like I can't get this DAW to only put in a snapshot every so often, not every 20 seconds?
yeah,
And it's like, Lord have mercy, I probably can.
ideally, I'd like to add an SSD drive to the music machine, and like you got an SSD, right, Glenn? You got a
Yep.
dual, and
Yeah.
basically
I put a.
your SSD does the
you,
heavy lifting.
you know
I
that
had one
man's
that
got
was
an
only
SSD.
120 gigs maybe or 150 gigs. It was really small, solid state,
But
but I was using
that's
that
a
as my primary
that's
drive. I made
yeah,
that
that's a
now.
great space for like using for the fast data
That's
access.
my Warzone drive now. Yes, I
Yeah,
made that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
so
then on
true.
the primary is now like a 450. I think it is
Nice,
450
nice.
solid state. And then the two platters are terabytes, and then the external is a 2 terabyte. I
Yeah.
need to upgrade though because even all of those like I'm like 90 95 90% full on like all of them plus
Well,
the Dropbox. So
when you do upgrade and you transfer that stuff, wipe those ones you got, and
I always say I will, and I never do. I'm always like, well, now I've got another copy of it, so that's another extra safety. So I'll put
yeah,
that one on
yeah,
the shelf and be like,
it's
yes,
another security blanket,
yes, it's
right?
there. I have it. I know I have it. Same thing with the Dropbox,
I don't tend to wipe drives. I tend to buy more.
right?
Yeah,
And that's the thing is the way that usually it's so long, in between me buying new drives, like the two internal 1 terabyte platters I have now, I could easily replace those with 8 terabytes each right now. And if I did, there's enough room to put that everything that's on that 1 terabyte in there, and I got 7 terabytes left on each of them. And so that that you play that whole game. So it's like I have drives that have everything from the drive before it is in a folder, and everything from the drive before that is in a folder on that.
yeah.
So I could go back like 8 computers, just digging down that one subfolder.
I hear you on that,
But that's
man.
just one of those things about organizing stuff and having backups of stuff and being finding stuff from years ago and be like, oh man, I remember that game, or I remember
Yeah,
that spreadsheet or that whatever, like just stuff from back then that reminds you of something specific.
Dang,
or
I
when,
still have a couple gigs of emails from the 90s.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Me too, man. Me too.
That's wild.
I mean, I kept those at first. It was all for security reasons. You keep them for the first 7 years and all that. I mean, I was a domain administrator for a long time, so like that's the kind of thing where somebody may come back and need an email from something from some time. So it's like, yes, you save that for the first 7-10 years, whatever. But at this point, it's like no one's looking for any of that stuff.
Save it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, no, I don't think I need to bring that stuff forward any further. But that's okay. But I get it.
Until you're looking for that serial number for that software that you bought in like 1998.
Yeah, and that's where it's like at some point it's on the company's end. It's like, come on, you guys have that information, right? Like, can't I just prove that I'm me and you give me my software and we go from there?
Yeah.
Like, do I have to really dig through the last 5 crashed computers worth of crap over here? Come on.
I have.
I know.
I have to get that serial number.
It's important. And that's why a lot of times I used to just take a screenshot of like, if I'm going to install something like that and I know that I'm going to be using it for a long time, I'll take a screenshot of like the serial number and have that in a folder as well, like up on Dropbox and all that. It's just a picture, but it's something that I can go reference and, get the information I need sometime later.
Right. Yeah,
random stuff.
I'm not ever going to get rid of stuff either.
Yeah. I mean, when we talked about Cakewalk, I mean, how long have you had Cakewalk? I mean, Cakewalk's one of those that I know that I had it on CD. I got I borrowed it from my cousin.
I had it on
decades
floppy.
ago. Yeah.
Back in the 80s,
Yeah.
the original Cakewalk was just a MIDI sequencer. I want to say like 88, maybe.
Yeah.
That was
for me. It was on
first version of
CD-ROM, so it was
Cakewalk.
a little bit further ahead, but like a few years after, I should say. But still, like decades ago at this point. At least 25 years ago, or if not more. It's been around.
I wish I would have got my mind wrapped around digital recording a lot sooner. And I didn't out of spite because I was about 17 years old and I had just finished really getting a good grip on analog recording in an analog studio because my uncle had a really nice one. And
then they changed everything on you.
Yeah,
It happened to me.
It was right about the point where I was finally getting trusted behind the 48x8. And then a friend of mine walks in with a laptop, sets it on the console next to me, and he goes, "Hey, check this out." I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "It's Pro Tools." I was like, "What's that mean?" He was like, "Everything in the studio, I can do right here in this laptop." And I'm like, "Shut up!" And he was like, "No." I'm like, "Get out." Yeah, and I didn't talk to him for 6 months. I was so butthurt. I mean, we're still best friends to this day. Like, we're co-founders of a hip hop label down in Houston, so we're still real close. But yeah, for the first 6 months after finding out about Pro Tools,
and it really stings if you put investment into analog equipment. That happened to me with music and photography. In the 90s.
Digital photography?
I spent tens of thousands of dollars on photography equipment in the 90s. I was a photographer. And after a decade of that, digital started coming out at the end of the 90s and all that investment. Not to say it was a total waste, but once you start shooting digital, you don't want to use the analog equipment anymore. Same happened with my music. We bought a 8-track reel-to-reel, cost us $3,500, 1994. Then ADATs and digital equipment started coming out, towards the middle of the 90s.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just built a studio with all this analog equipment.
Yep.
I'm going to go back out there and spend twice as much because, the digital equipment back then wasn't cheaper and it wasn't actually necessarily better.
Oh, no.
When he showed you that Pro Tools, it probably wasn't replacing everything that studio could do at that time.
At that point, they had the concept for it, but it wasn't all ironed out fully at that point.
They didn't really smooth out DAWs and digital recording till 2007, 2008. Things started to fall in place. Computers hit their sweet spot with RAM, with speed, and storage started to become cheap enough where we got these big ass wave files. And most importantly, VST2. When VST2 set up as a standard, the DAWs started to align and they started to have something that all DAWs could share, which was plugins.
Yep.
Because before that, you had to pick a DAW and you had to
You were married to that DAW,
that was your baby. Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why I stayed away from Pro Tools, because even to this day, Pro Tools still likes to take the out of the box approach. It likes to be the proprietary black sheep of the DAW families, and Pro Tools plugins work awesome inside of Pro Tools, but they don't work anywhere else. If they do, they work like shit. And VST support inside of Pro Tools goes through an emulation layer, which makes the VST support run like shit. So it may be the professional's choice for a DAW in the big studios, but not because it's better, just because
It's more
recording
standardized.
engineers get told like this is what you have to use when they go to
Yeah,
music college.
yeah, pretty much. Because anybody that is anybody, for some reason, they all still use Pro Tools. Even though we all know the Pro Tools really isn't the best thing out there, you know.
I mean,
Like, I
it
mean,
doesn't
it.
suck.
No,
Like
not at
I
all.
wouldn't be like, oh man, I got to use Pro Tools to make this
Nah,
album.
nah, I
But at
wouldn't
the
either.
same time,
I'd
it would
rather
take me
use.
longer.
Yeah, I'd rather use the Reaper or something else. Yeah,
Reaper
because
really has hit a sweet spot when it
they
comes to
have, they have.
it
Just watching
works
Jason's workflow in
everywhere.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. To see how fast like Jason can produce something in Reaper is a sell for
That
me. It's
yeah,
enough.
like just watching him work is just yeah, it's a sell for me too. And then knowing that Gary does everything he does on Reaper, and he does it with such a simple mindset that it just boggles my mind. Because he sent me a video the other day. It was him getting up, getting ready for work or whatever. And but before he was gonna go, he's like, "Man, I'm gonna lay down a quick track," and all he's got on his kitchen table is like I think an iPad for his plugins for his guitar, and then he's running that to a small computer, to a laptop, so he can actually use one just for the labor of the guitar, and then one to actually record, and then
And
all
that's a smart approach.
and
I would rather have a separate computer to do my effects
for
processing for my
Split the
instrument
workload. Yeah. Yeah.
and
that, and that's
leave
what I
the
was gonna.
DAW to be a DAW.
That's what I was going to tell you earlier, Tony. Is I finally wisened up to it. I did it today.
Nice.
I turned my desktop and I put a separate monitor on that, and I'm using that only for the guitar processing. And then I got that going to my boss via MIDI, and then out of the boss into the interface into the laptop, which is recording into the DAW. And so yeah, it took all of the usage completely
Yeah.
off the
Why do you
computer.
think I have so many screens
I
around here?
know, I know. I'll get there one day.
Mission control.
I know I've got like 3 or 4 TVs in this room right now. I know that.
Well, it's also the reason I haven't had to really upgrade a machine because I mean I'm a power user. I 3D graphic arts,
Yeah,
video editing,
you do use
all
some.
of
Yeah,
these are demanding, but I'm still using machines that are 6 to 8 years old because those machines aren't bogged down with all the other crap that I use a
right,
computer for.
They're
right,
not trash yet. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
the other machines, the smaller machines, that they're fine for browsers and little work. And my workstations, they're clean, optimized for. I got two music workstations.
Right.
Case one fucks up.
The other thing
Yep.
is that you're the kind of user who, at the slightest hint of a machine not working properly, you'll just reformat it and just start fresh because you know what the default position is. You start there and then you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's not a bad idea to like refresh in a machine just to get it back to optimized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
I mean, let's face it. Like, no matter how many different menus we dive into through Task Manager, Device Manager, System, Manager, any of that, we're gonna miss something, or God forbid, we're gonna accidentally disengage something we shouldn't, and like then it,
Or you're going to go to a website and crap's going to get put onto Chrome or onto the operating system. And next thing you know, you got 10 things starting up with the machine that weren't there.
yeah, and you don't even know it
Well,
until you.
I usually can feel when there's a disturbance in the force.
Same here. Because if something ain't right, I'll go down and hit that taskbar. What's going on over here? Like what's
Oh
really
yeah, yeah. I
what's
look at the
happening?
task manager
Yeah,
regularly.
I'm always on the defrag, always on the disk cleanup, always on the task manager,
My
and
first thought is low hard drive space because that's just where I live. But
Yeah. Well, and
I'm
defrag is still a real thing. I mean, it's not as bad with SSDs. You don't tend to have because they're the
right.
way they are,
Well, there are
but
no mechanical parts. Yeah, so I mean,
flatter world, and even with like Windows sets itself up to automatically like optimize on a scheduled basis, but I turn that off. I
Yeah.
don't like automated services running all the time. So
Because they're running in the background.
yeah,
Because they're going to run when you don't want them to. Yeah.
my
True.
workstations do not run automatic maintenance because I don't want that maintenance to
Yeah.
run whenever the hell it feels like it.
Nor do mine.
Which
Although
means
now,
that you
now
have
could
to.
afford the bandwidth, though. Now the bandwidth, you'd be like, you can update whenever you want, and you'll be fine. You used to have to worry about when the updates would happen, so that they wouldn't all pull down at the same time, because you end up killing your
couldn't
bandwidth
even-
for the month.
2 months ago, I couldn't even get a Windows update.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So now you could splurge and turn them all on, but you're not gonna, because
well,
you'd rather stick to the way you do it. Yeah.
And a lot of those updates, especially in the last year and a half on the Windows side,
Yeah.
I'm hesitant when I do update the machine. I am saving a snapshot because some of those big service pack ones, I'm just waiting for like Windows 11 to pop up on one of my machines because
There you go.
I've already dealt with some clients who
Mhm.
didn't do anything. Like they just turned their machine on one day and all of a sudden they're on Windows 11.
Oh,
We saw it
And-
happen in here a couple times. Some people
Yeah.
just showed up with machines, and you're like, wait, what is this now?
Yeah, they didn't even realize they were on Windows 11. I knew because
You can tell right away. Yeah.
yeah, they put the start button in the center, and
Like you said, there's a disturbance in the force. It's like, this is not right. What happened
yeah,
here?
This is not normal.
yeah, they're
'cause
turning off features and settings and shit that just don't make this upgrade appealing. I don't see myself going to Windows 11. I
Nor
think
do
Windows
I.
10 is the last Windows that I'm going to use seriously for a Windows music machine. And if the VST support on Linux can get itself together, Reaper on Linux is
Yes.
something I see in my future.
That would
If
be-
for
And-
nothing else, just to see how it's going to work. I got a few spare machines here.
I was gonna say, yeah, just with the number of machines you've got, you could have a Linux one over here running it. You could have it running on Windows next to it. You could try it in each configuration and see where it runs best, what it likes best. You know.
Yeah, if I can run the plugins on an older Windows machine like Windows 10
Mhm.
and really have the main DAW over, say, on a Linux box, I'm fine with that.
What do you guys think about a Hackintosh? What have
Uh,
y'all heard of them?
I've got some here. I've got a Mac virtual machine on my workstation here. The only problem with it is Mac runs like shit under Windows. So like as a virtual machine, it's kind of not worth. I don't actually get to use the power of that machine because there's so much overhead between the Windows layer and then the Mac layer running as a
Right.
virtual machine that
Right.
plus there's nothing on the Mac operating system. Like I'm not doing this because there's something on the Mac operating system I actually want.
Yeah.
It doesn't offer any kind of the exception would be if I was to use Pro Tools.
I have to say,
Pro
yeah,
Tools
like-
for Windows sucks balls. So if I was gonna use Pro Tools, I would only
you-
use Pro Tools on a Mac.
I would say that in the corporate environment, the way they would do it is the opposite way, where if they needed both access to a Macintosh and to Windows, they would actually get a MacBook Air and put a Windows virtual machine on that,
There you
Right.
go. That'd
because
be
they found that that's the better way to do it.
as a
Yeah.
programmer, back in 2008 when I was doing all that programming for that trading AI.
Yeah.
That's when I did get a MacBook because I had to test this on every platform.
Yeah.
So
And you gotta be
Windows
thorough about it. Yeah.
and Windows runs fantastic on a Mac.
Exactly.
Like you
Exactly.
run Fusion is an emulator on the Mac,
Mhm.
and it'll let you install any Windows, any Linux under the Mac. And Windows on a Mac running that way is as fast and good as if it was Windows installed directly.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
But the reverse
But you got to
is not
spend
true.
$3,000 for that damn MacBook.
Right. But the reverse was not
Yeah.
true, where you take any random, whatever kind of laptop you had and try to put Mac on it, in a virtual machine, like he was saying, it's not the same as the reverse. So yeah.
Yeah, Apple
Yeah.
purposely sabotages their operating system so that it does not run well in
With
non-Apple environments.
Correct.
And shame on a company that like sabotages their equipment like that so that you're forced to use a certain piece of hardware to run a certain piece of software like that.
Well, people feel the same way
It's
about the planned
unnecessary.
obsolescence as well, where, you know, once you get an update of a certain level, you can brick your iPad. Like if you've been running your iPad for years and it's been fine, and then you just get one update and all of a sudden, boom, it's done.
Yeah.
Like now it'll never run again because you hit that one upgrade that was just one too far for that particular.
You know why?
line.
Because they continue to update their features and like their battery optimization, the overheating. My
Yep.
iPhone, the iPhone 8 that I have, since the last update that I put on it, now every once in a while I get this screen saying, "Ooh, your iPhone's too hot." I'm turning off until I cool off.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm dealing with a little baby for the phone. Like, I'm too hot. I'm not. I'm gonna
See, it
throw
also
a
depends.
tantrum.
It also depends what it's trying to do, though. Where, like, for me, if it's trying to charge while
It's
it's trying to do
literally
other
just
things,
running a camera. Like, I'm
Yeah,
using it
yeah.
as a camera for
but
over
that's, you know,
there.
that's
And
the screen is on. It's working as a camera. It's doing, you know, it's doing stuff, right? Whereas if it was just in standby mode, it'd be fine. It wouldn't be overheating.
I was
But for
about
me,
to-
like if it's charging and doing something,
it was
Okay, well-
designed to do that.
I'm
Like,
not-
at the
it
same
should
time, though,
not
it's designed
overheat
to be,
it.
it's designed to be charged, and then
got-
you discharge while you're doing stuff with it.
I've got a question for you guys because y'all seem to probably know this answer. My son claims that whenever he was at the lake the other day, that his phone overheated while it was sitting underneath a towel. He's got an iPhone. Is that something that's going to happen?
See, it depends what it's doing. Like I was saying, if it's sending and receiving data and it's under something, like to me, it's worse if it's sitting in direct sunlight. Even just
Right,
like my buddy
right.
Mike's iPad will literally lock up and have to be shut down and restart because he's
Right.
using it to mix sound. But it'll be just on and sitting in the sunlight, and by getting that extra heat of being on and getting direct sunlight is too much for it. So it's like we would have to just tuck it under something. It's actually better to have it under something, not like wrapped under something necessarily, but
Well,
something
yeah,
blocking
you don't want the
direct
heat to
sunlight.
be. You don't want the
trapped,
heat to
right?
contain
Insulated.
itself
Yeah,
either.
you
So
don't
like
want
that's no.
insulated.
And you know the problem with those, just like their computers, they have shitty ventilation. They seal the damn device
Yeah.
already bad,
Yeah.
and they don't distribute any of that heat properly with their.
That's
they-
one of the big ones. To me, just putting it down on something like a gel
Apple's
pad.
argument is
it'll
that
spread the
our
heat.
equipment doesn't
Yeah,
get
yeah.
hot, so we don't need fans in our MacBooks and our Airs, and our phones are built so perfectly that they don't overheat. And then, ironically, they've had to build this shit into their software to force it to turn off so it
Right.
doesn't blow up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, part of that is that the usage thing where when they're testing it, they're saying, okay, here's a phone, it's fully charged. And then they take it off the charger and they go use it to zero, like from 100 to zero. And they do that test and they do that over and over and over. And it's fine, never overheats. But then they're at 20% and they know they're going to be going somewhere in a little while. So they know they have to charge it, but they know they have to do something in the meantime. So they're trying to charge while doing something. And that's where you're getting that double heating going on. And then it's localized too. Like if you ever feel the back of the device, whether it's the iPad or the phones, you'll feel there's one spot that is hot.
Yeah, plus they're trying to do
not the
this
whole thing.
rapid charge. Like these days, this whole rapid charge with the lightning port, like, oh, charge in 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Cool that you can charge in 10 minutes, but
But stand back.
oh yeah, like,
Put on some PPE while you're at it. Yeah.
when
Just
they
a little-
first started trying to do that, that's when you started hearing of like all these phones exploding on the planes and whatnot. Samsung iPhones, the generation 8s to 9s, they were trying to incorporate this stuff, and a lot of them had defective batteries and were known to
Explode.
overheat and explode.
And then it was all pushing that limit because everybody wanted a phone that lasted longer on a charge or, you know, could sit on standby longer. I mean, it's constantly pushing that envelope. And, you know, there are times where you pass that point where you say, okay, we passed the point of where it should have been. And now they're starting to overheat or you know, burst in flames. And they could add that little software thing where it says, okay, we know it's getting too hot, so it'll shut itself down as a self-preservation thing, because I would much rather have my phone shut itself off every once in a while like that than to have it once overheat to the point where it damages itself and now it's broken. I have to get another phone. You know, that's where it's annoying, but
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not against that precautionary setting. It's just annoying. Like, I use this phone the same way for the last like year and a half, and all of a sudden, after an update, like 2 hours of camera use, and it can't handle it anymore. It did for the last year and a half.
Yep. And that's one of those things, if it was fully charged and you have to have it connected to the cable in order to be sending what you're sending, right? So you can't just have
I
it not
I
connected or.
I keep mine because if I'm gonna run the camera for like, a couple of hours like during
Right.
our shows and stuff, you gotta kind of keep it charged. Otherwise, the camera will drain it.
Yep.
Old phone, it'll drain about an hour and a half.
Exactly. And that's my point as far as like that overheating and the self-preservation and all of that. If it's trying to fully drain the battery while it's charging, while it's doing stuff, you're asking a lot of the phone. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it going into thermal shutdown or thermal overload. But doesn't mean it should be designed that way, but it's more that as the phone gets older, we're just trying to task it more and more. They keep upgrading what they need to the requirements for the apps that they design, and the new
Well,
phones
and they keep
can do
making
it.
bigger screens,
Mhm.
throwing more cameras in there. I mean, this iPhone 13, they got like a tri camera on
Oh
the
yeah.
back,
Yep.
multiple mics, plus the front cameras and
And you've
screens
heard and
even
you've heard how
bigger.
good the mic picks up on that Android too. I mean, when I do all those recordings with for the bands that I do, it's like it comes in really nice.
Yours is a
Well, that's
Samsung?
what
Samsung, yeah, it's an
Yeah,
A32.
yeah, that's
Samsung has kept up with Apple when it comes to
the A32 is a good
apples
one
to
too. It is.
oranges.
Well, because like that's what I was telling them is all my acoustic tracks. I only record those on the phone on BandLab now because man, BandLab has come a long way and they're mighty impressive now with the way they're able to capture your acoustic. And it's like,
Some of their
man,
updates, especially in the last year, have really helped to when I first came on BandLab, the tracks were always hot. Everybody that was recording through their phones or going straight to the BandLab DAW, their tracks were always really hot. And I think in the last year they've kind of toned down. Whoa, is there lightning going on outside?
It looked like it. I saw
I
a
know.
bug go
Did
by
you see
before,
that?
but I saw that flash.
We're at war.
No.
But I think along the way, as BandLab's been pushing out their updates, they've kind of solved over that hot input problem
Mhm.
because I'm seeing more and more tracks that are actually coming in and they're not blown out, especially on phone mics.
The other question was how much has the mastering changed? Because I know that in the beginning, people were doing when they first started the BandLab mastering, people would do the automatic mastering, and it would be just a solid brick waveforms every
Yeah,
time.
yeah, that especially if they use that enhanced option, the fire. Now they call it the fire, but look at what it does to that damn wave. It's not good.
Mhm.
And people probably think it sounds good because it does make things louder, but
The thing is to compare each one, like compare each of them together, and then actually try to mix it yourself. Just go with your own, again, minimal effects on everything. Just try to mix it yourself, see what that sounds like compared to each of those other ones. And I think you'll find the one that you mix yourself after listening to those references would sound the best, just because you're only adding or taking away where you need to, where you think that particular track needs something
yeah,
added
as
or
soon as I
subtracted.
was happy with my mixes, I stopped using their mastering. The only reason why I was using their mastering is because I wasn't completely happy with my mix. Once I
Mhm.
was happy with my mix, their mastering was fucking my mix up. Like,
Right.
now you are screwing up what I managed to do.
Now, Raj, you blipped out a second ago, so you're muted on Zoom there. I see you trying to talk.
yeah, absolutely. Because like for the longest time, like you would come across a really cool track, but then like you would notice that every wave was covering top to bottom, and it was like, guys, I get it. You're fighting the loudness wars here, but this is not going to translate to your home theater. This is not
Well,
going to translate to your car. This isn't going to
and
translate to
that
your
loudness is
earbuds.
different depending on what you're listening to. Because if I'm listening
Yes.
on my music machine and I've got my headphones over there, the level and the volume that I hear off the same exact BandLab track is completely different than if I'm playing off my computer speakers or my
Right.
monitor here
Yep.
Yep.
versus like Bluetooth headsets on a phone, which it's no wonder everybody wants to use the Fire because phones are purposely that's another peeve of
The
mine with Apple.
bass
Like they
reluctant.
won't
Yeah.
even let you turn your volume actually up to where you want it to be because ooh, we don't want to damage your ears. Let me decide. what
Yeah, it's like
volume
this is
I want to
yeah,
put
it's
my
like
device on.
For me though, the earbuds aren't really the answer. Like these, the studio monitors, the
that
Sony's. These are
yeah,
Oh
they're
yeah, yeah.
that's the way to
that's
go.
the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, they're so
Because
comfortable. I wear these with like 18 hours a day sometimes. It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
because like me and Tony were talking about, until they get
Those are
zero late.
Glenn's ears.
Those are nice
His
cans,
ears have
man.
transformed into headphones.
Yeah, those are wonderful cans, man. They are. And like me and Tony were talking about that the other night. Until they come up with a zero latency, mixing in-ear monitor,
Mhm.
even still when they do that, like he said, I'm still going to want a set of closed backs to put on top of it, just
Mhm.
so I can get my spatial, bass
Well, for good
sounds.
reference.
Yeah,
Good
good. Yeah,
reference monitors.
Mhm.
yeah, because I can't ever see a set of simple in-ear earbuds being the way to go for mixing, or maybe reference, but
I would
not.
only use them for control messages. Like right now, I actually have some in under
Do
these
you?
headphones because if I go over there, I don't want to have to switch my headphones. So
Right.
I can just take this, plug it in there, and boom, I can hear what's going on the other machine.
So he's wearing two
I
layers of headphones.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't wait to see how your stuff's going to turn out once you get all three sections of your studio to be able to communicate at the same time. That's going to be really cool. I
Oh,
think
it's the dream.
oh man,
Nice.
that
The
is.
Lord of the Rings in audio.
It is, man. Because like that's how I felt today when I got the dadgum guitar plug-in. Because I was able to use the Neural DSP guitar plugins in
Oh, you playing
conjunction.
with Neural? How long have you
Well,
been playing with it?
well, not terribly too long, but they've got some pretty killer stuff. They do.
Well,
I
talk with
mean,
Jason. He knows that shit
I
real
know.
well.
Well, yeah, he's the one that hooked me up with the Nolly. Yeah, he hooked me up with the Nolly and a couple of other ones, and then Gary hooks me up with the rest of them. And Neural's got some good stuff. They do, and to be able to use the Neural at the same exact time with USB over MIDI that I was using my Boss Katana with the actual Tone Studio pulled up at the same time, like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Like you got to be careful because you might just fall into the sauce like real quick,
Yep.
because you got so much power, but just between those two things, and they're both linked up simultaneously. It's like I better just dial down everything back down to zero as far as being down the center of the clock here on one amp if I'm going to start messing with the neural. And then if I'm going to back off the neural a little bit, maybe I could tweak and add a little bit to with the boss, because yeah, that's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
And because
It's a
typically,
balancing act.
That's where you get back
yeah,
into that over tweaking again. Like if you start
yeah,
monkeying with things too much.
and once I start feeling like I'm monkeying with things, I go back to old trusty. That's my fucking PV Viper 75. I know it's one of the cheapest model amps ever made, but bro, it's one of the best amps I've ever come across in my life for at home studio work, because it really does give you a decent output signal. The gates are a little iffy, but if you use a pre-gate before that and a post-gate, you wipe that problem right off the face of the earth. And that's a good part about the Tone Studio for Boss is you literally have access to every pedal that Boss ever
The
made.
Tone Studio
Right,
is the
right.
software that
Runs
integrates
the
the boss with the computer.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You plug in USB to your Boss to your amp, and then you pull up your Tone Studio on your screen.
Yeah, it's
And
nice to edit that shit on the screen.
yeah, and the cool part is on the actual amp you don't get all the options that you do in the Tone Studio, so you can't set your noise gates or anything like that. But you go into the Tone Studio, you can set these things down to the most minute increments you can imagine, and you can really get it to work for you. And I will say the Boss Gate, even though it's in the Tone Studio, it's just as good as it ever was under a pedal. I guarantee you that. Like, it is just as good, if not even a little bit better, because it's kind of intuitive. It almost knows whenever you're going to need that little bit of extra release.
Yeah, you're
And
seeing a little more music AI coming into these. They're getting smarter, and
yep.
the effects are like almost knowing when to turn on.
But you know what the craziest part I find with the Boss is that no matter what I do, no matter how I'm routing things, I cannot find um, a distorted or overdriven guitar tone that I actually like. I
Mm.
can't. The closest thing I
I've
can
heard that
find.
with the Line 6s. I've heard that
Oh,
with the bosses.
Line 6 was the worst. They're like, I never even bothered after the Pod Pro
But
because I was like,
ironically, they're wildly popular.
yeah,
The same
yeah.
guitars that are bitching that they can't find like that perfect distortion still love like their device. They just don't have that. Distortion is a finicky effect. Like
Especially when it comes to low end modeling amps, because then it becomes a lot of your hands as well as your guitar. You know what I mean? That's whenever a guitar does actually matter, is whenever you're dealing with a low end modeling amp, because you can have a
Oh,
piece
that.
of crap guitar.
there is a
It,
war going on out there.
where
In my
The Tona
backyard,
zone.
I'm actually gonna go see. Yeah, there's explosions going
There's like low
on.
level lightning going on in the horizon.
damn it, take your camera with you.
Yeah.
It
Well,
must be that lightning. Father Pat sent it to me.
oh man,
Well,
well,
actually, we had some down by me. I was supposed to have a gig earlier, and we got everything set up. Got the gear broken out, and we got everybody set up. We were ready to do sound check, and they were just about to do sound check, and they checked with the mayor, and the mayor was like, "Nope, shut it down. There's a
oh
storm coming through."
man,
And it looked like it cleared up right after they called it too. So,
how much were you slated to make tonight?
oh no, I got paid anyway, so I mean it was fine.
Okay, that's cool. That's
It's like we were already there and ready and going essentially.
okay.
So,
So, you
so
were already in the middle of doing your job,
Yeah.
basically.
And it was actually just it was kind of like a park, and it's right outside of one of the bars that we work with or work in a lot. So like as soon as they called it, it was like, all right. So we packed everything in the cars and just went over to the bar and had a couple beers, and they had some
But
chicken
yeah,
fingers, and
you
we
don't
took
want to
off.
be playing outside with lightning.
Yeah, no,
God no,
no.
God no, God no.
And in this
Like,
case, it wasn't even RPA and all that. It was an event where they already had the PA was already taken care of, the lights were already taken care of. All I was really there for was to be roadieing and be a stage tech to help them with the wireless devices and help them set up the guitars and whatnot.
yeah, because I really don't trust other people's equipment whenever the weather's increment. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, hey, are you sure that I'm not gonna fly off the stage as soon as I touch this microphone? Because I don't want to die that way.
And these guys did a great job. I mean, everything, the guys who worked at the venue there, everything was super neat. The cables were all run perfectly. Like my buddy Mike would have looked at it and who would have given it the thorough thumbs up of approval there.
Man.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, man.
It was really solid.
'Cause
Yeah,
there's
my
nothing-
keyboard costs as much as a car. I don't want it to get struck by lightning.
yeah, like that's how I feel about my guitars. They don't cost as much as cars, but they all cost over $1,000 a piece. And so it's like that's enough for me to not want any of my gear to get struck by lightning either.
Yeah. And even just the sentimental value. I mean, to me, like, the gear, like the things that I have as gear are things that I could replace easily enough, but it's those things like that's my guitar, or that's my bass or whatever. Like that's, it's got sentimental value.
Like
It should shoot lightning out of it.
Right? Yeah, that would be the
If they
only
can
way-
invent a guitar that does that.
Oh yeah.
That's the only way I would be happy with my Schecter Blackjack firing, doing something crazy if lightning flew out the headstock, because that thing was so hard to track down, man. It really was, because like I said, they only did a 1-year limited run on it, and nobody has them. It took me all pandemic to find just one, and what bummed me out was about 6 months after I found it and bought it, I finally came across the actual one that I wanted. The crimson red burst. But at the same time, the dude that had it, he lived here in Texas, not far from me, and I was willing to take the drive, but he had put some Fishman Fluence pickups in it. And hey, to each their own, but the Fishmans, I don't care what you say. I've played Fishmans on Gibsons. I've played Fishmans on Schecters. I've played them on quite a few axes. And there's a lot of things that Fishmans won't let you do that most, even cheap pickups will allow you to do. Like, it's real hard to get a lot of harmonics out of Fishmans. Mm-hmm. And that's surprising considering that a lot of Fishmans have the Sustainiac.
What are they? They just cold? They don't pick up the signal?
They're kind of cold. But they're active. But they're still kind of cold.
Oh, yeah. And Glenn says no to active.
Well,
So
only for my
say
equipment.
no.
I like not having the extra point of failure. Like I don't want an active bass just because that's a battery that I have to have in my bass that could go bad in the middle of a gig on me. That's one reason why I like passive for my stuff.
Or corrode after a
that
couple
and
years.
passive, in my opinion, has its strong points because when you do a volume swell on a passive guitar, you're getting a proper volume swell. Like you do a swell on a active guitar, you're not getting a proper swell, and that was what made me fall in love with my first Blackjack, the red one that I had a few years back. Was I got the guitar, and then I bought a Black Star HT40 Club, and I was living in an apartment. I was like, this is too much amplifier for an apartment. I've got to take this back. So I
Yeah.
took it back, and my dumbass ended up buying a Marshall Code, knowing damn well I was not going to be able to tolerate it whatsoever. And so I took it back the next day, got the Boss Katana, and I was like, hey, I can kind of work with this. But then I was like, the singing is kind of limited if you don't have the tone studio. So I was like, okay, man, what am I going to do? I'm going to take this back. So the following morning, I go to take it back. And just as I get my receipt, my refund, I turn around and see the used section of Guitar Center. And I see a PV sitting on the used floor for $149. And I'm like, what PV costs $149 that isn't a damn Rage 50? I was like, there's got to be something to this here because it's either there with the price with PV or it's way down here. It's not that, and it's not worth a damn if it is that. And so I was like, curiosity got the cat that day. So I went ahead and turned around and said, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and buy that.
You
And I
found a
got it.
hidden gem?
Oh man, I found the favorite amp, my favorite amp of all time.
Nice.
I got two matching. I bought another one just for the sake of having a second one off of Reverb like 2 months ago. So I've got two PV Viper 75 sitting right here. Yeah, and like I don't even use one of them, but that's just in case this
It
other one
never
goes
hurts
out.
to. I got two phantoms.
Yeah, yeah. Because what I originally did was last year I had another Boss Katana Mark One, and before I traded to a guy on Reverb for a guitar for my Ibanez AR 200 from '98, because he liked I had a LTD EC 331 I think it was. It was one of the lower model LTDs, but it was a beautiful guitar. It had this beautiful purple burst, and he was just in love with it. And I was like, well, what are you working with? And he was like, well, I've got this AR 200 from '98. I still have the original keys to the case. I still have the original receipt. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I was like, because the AR 200 at that year, that was a primo Ibanez guitar. I was like, you really couldn't mess with. There really wasn't much that Ibanez had in the terms of a double cutaway or a single cutaway. There wasn't an RG that was worth a damn. And those AR 200s really were because they come to find out the one I've got, it's a solid neck through. It's one piece of wood. And it's like, yeah, and then he had some Seymour Duncan. What do you have on? What did he put? It wasn't the Hot Rails. It was a Seymour Duncan. I forget which ones they are. It might have been the Hot Rails. And but man, when you do that swell on that passive, well, with that guitar, you feel like Slash cranking it up during Paradise City, cause, yeah, because you feel that the bite just keep on kicking, and it's amazing, and yet it still picks up the most natural, just positively charged harmonics that you could imagine for a passive guitar, especially a big body, and it's good because it's got a fat neck. Because like sometimes, like if y'all go through my catalog, y'all see that I did "Waking the Demon" from Bullet for My Valentine, which is a heavy metal band, but they their guys use a Jackson Flying V and a Gibson Explorer, and the Explorer neck really isn't that thick. It's not terribly skinny, but it's not terribly thick. But this Ibanez neck, it's a fat daddy, and I've been used to playing my damn Schecter, tapered radius, and for forever now. And so when I tried to record that song, I was like, "Holy God!" I was like, "Dude," I was like, I might need to practice on this guitar just alone for a few days before I can even try to re-record the song." And yeah, well, that and the fact that I put the not so slinky strings on there, the 52s,
I was gonna
yeah,
ask you which strings you had on there. Yeah,
yeah, I put the 52s, and I was like,
It's always
I
the second question.
yeah, I knew it was going to be a challenge because I've been on 10 to 52s for so long with the Schecters and everything else that I knew when I went up to 12 to 56s, it was going to be like, ooh, it's time to you have to get your hands back in shape. Because a long time ago, I used to primarily only play like in drop B. So I got used to that gauge and it just didn't seem like no big deal. And then I immediately stopped that and went back to standards. And then going back to it, I was like, oh, I forgot about this. I was like, oh yeah, this. I need to stretch my hands real good before I play tonight because I might end up hurting in the morning. Yeah, and so, but it sounds good. I like it. Man, like it's not the prettiest guitar, and like to be honest with you guys, I can't stand gold tops. I really cannot stand them at all. But I when I got this guitar from
Looks
this
pretty.
guy, it is a pretty guitar, and Like Tony, you know me. Every time I put my guitar out of my hands, it gets wiped down immediately, like on all points. Like every bit of it gets cleaned. Like I don't like to let my guitars get corroded or anything like that. And so this came as is as a gold top, and I thought to myself, well, you know what? How about paint it black and then put an orange peel clear coat over it. That'll give it that gnarly ass, kind of like gothy feel to it. And then I even went so far as to take some red letters and stencil out "Bad Baby" down here, and it was a badass looking guitar. I mean, I'll send y'all some pics of it. And but then after about 4 months of playing it, a chip, a big chip come out. And I said, dude, I didn't prep it correctly. I said, I fucked up. I said, okay, let me pull every bit of this paint I can off and see where I'm left at. And surprisingly, this, and this here at the corner, and that right there are the only parts that wouldn't come off. Like there,
Yeah, yeah.
and on that corner, those are the only two pieces of paint that wouldn't come off, no matter what I did. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave those there, and I'm gonna go ahead and find me a cool looking sticker that really will stay its course, and that's what that is. And
Hey,
like,
you can't go wrong with a skull.
Skull, yeah.
right,
There it's
yeah.
going.
Especially considering that I want to name this thing the Bastard. I want to get somebody that does artwork for us to help me out and fucking give me a stencil for the Bastard, because I bought this $30 Krylon metallic black paint that I didn't even know they made, and that's what I'm going to use to paint the words of the Bastard. And I think after that I might reseal it one time and call it a day, and I think it should hold after that. And I think it'll have a lot of character after that as well, as far as physical appearances go, because the guitar has got so much character as it is to begin with, just because of how well it plays and how heavy it is. This thing's a battle axe. This thing weighs as much as some fat kids do. Yeah, and so I definitely love it. I mean, it's begrudging, but I will never let
See,
it
if I was
go.
going to give it a name like that, I'd want to do it to a bass, the bass tart.
Hey, that's a good idea too. That I like that idea.
Well,
Because
plus
I
a
do,
5 string is extra fat. It's got the extra weight to it already.
That's true too. That's true too. Because I've got this Ibanez bass here, and a friend of mine did all these stickers and shit. I'm not really into stickers that much. Like that Ibanez was an exception for me because I really don't do stickers. I would prefer get one of my tattoo buddy artists that's been doing tattoos for an extremely long time. Just draw me a whole freaking stencil paper, drawing, and just get to it. Let him do
Oh, and it's
everything.
nice and personal at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and pay him what he wants to be paid. That way, I get what I want. Yeah, because but
Shit,
this,
I won't tattoo my body, but I would totally tattoo my instrument.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've tattooed both. But I lived in the wildest and dumbest of times as far as me growing up, because it was just before the world got to the point to where everything became dangerous, everything needed to be watched out for. You couldn't go to the beach because you're gonna get necrofasciitis, all that good shit. Like I finished growing up
Or
before
flesh-eating bacteria
that that
in a
that that
lake.
that's necrofasciitis. That's what
Yep.
that is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it sounds
yeah,
like it.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, and like so, I was blessed to be able to skip school and run down to Galveston from Houston while I was in high school, and go to the beach and not worry about getting sick and things like that. Because growing up, going to the beach meant if you had any open wounds, you were going to leave there without them. You were going to be healthier whenever you left, because salt water, was good for you. But nowadays, man, don't get me, don't ask me, because I couldn't tell you, because I've seen a red tide, and those things don't look healthy, and they don't smell healthy either. And so it's like, what? I'm trying to steer clear of the beaches anymore.
Yeah, it depends
And
which beaches you're next to. I wouldn't coastal beaches.
yeah,
There's a
like
lot of shit coming in the coast these days.
yeah, like South Padre, I'll still go
Not to
down
mention
to.
sharks. Have you
Dude,
noticed like
dude,
shark sightings
dude,
in the last couple of weeks?
dude. And you know what's crazy is because a lot of people have started buying drones just for the sole purpose of warning surfers that, hey, that you've got a shark on your ass.
Yeah.
And because of that, like, we've become acutely aware of just how serious and how close of calls people are coming by on a daily basis, where we never knew that in the past. And not only that, like you said, sharks are getting desperate just like the rest of us.
Yeah,
And
they're getting some unusual ones, ones
yeah,
that don't normally come that
Right.
close to the shore, which
Right.
clearly they're looking for food.
Yeah. Something's wrong because they're coming to places that they don't normally come to, and that's like if that documentary, the Earth One Strange Rock. There's this one scene that shows the sea lions down in Antarctica, but the ice is melting so fast that where they normally go to lay and have plenty of space to lay on ice and just cool off in the sun all day, the ice is gone. And so these dudes are literally laying up like hippopotami in Africa, whereas they're sea lions in Antarctica. And the only way to get any fresh air is to climb a mountain, but these sea lions don't know how to get down. And
Oh
so,
man.
yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know whose gruesome idea it was to actually go this far on this documentary, but they went so far as to showing this one big seal climbing up to the top, and then you could see the sadness in his eyes, and they watched him as he just said, "All right, I gotta
See,
go."
I'd have a tough time filming that because I'd,
Oh, dude,
you
it
know,
hurt my heart
you
watching
wanna,
it.
yeah, you wanna help them, but at the same time, if you know, a documentary, if you're really doing your job, you need to stay out of their way,
Yeah,
for those
because there's
kinds of things. Because
yeah, because
a
you know
documentary crew that interferes with the environment when they're studying animals is not doing the
they're
right
not
job.
yeah they're not studying. They're just there being a nuisance and causing drama for the animal for the
They're
native
affecting.
animals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need to be out of sight, out of mind, let the animals do their thing and observe.
Have y'all seen the new Our Planet series?
They got a new
Y'all,
one?
yeah, y'all got to watch
I
it
remember
if you
Blue
have.
Planet was a good one, and
Yeah.
Blue
something
Planet
about
was an
Earth.
amazing.
Planet Earth, I think, was the other one I liked.
Yeah, there was Planet Earth. There was Our Planet. There's Earth One Strange Rock. That one's a really interesting.
That one I hadn't heard of. Yeah.
I like that one because a lot of that one is actual NASA astronauts who are recently, fresh from space, and they're all saying the same thing, and then they tell you there's only one thing this could be. That's God. And it's like when you're hearing it from scientists themselves, then some of the most qualified on Earth that have actually left the planet and survived to come back and deliver valuable information, and they say, it doesn't have to be a Jesus Christ. It doesn't have to
No,
be an
they're
Allah.
feeling the majesty of it all,
The,
and just
Part of it
how
is the
small
overview
we
effect.
can be.
yeah,
The
part
overview
of
effect when you see the
part-
whole planet all in one
that
go.
and to know that we're in one of the rarest zones of all existence, to be in the perfect spot to have the ability to have the life that we have.
And it
Because
is possible to believe in intelligent design and not necessarily conclude that there's an intelligent creator.
exactly,
Our
exactly.
design is, if it's not intelligent, it is certainly amazing. Like
Yes.
the life design, if it wasn't done intentionally, we are one hell of a happy accident.
Yeah,
A
like
lot of evolution went into it.
yeah, lots of things went into it, and because I say the same things, like personally, I believe in God, but I also know that God doesn't mean just have to be the father of Jesus. God can be
Yeah, it
Allah.
doesn't have to be the big guy in the sky.
Yeah, God can be the creator. You know what I mean?
Although
God.
right now I think he is in my sky. If you see my
And I think he's mad
camera.
though because it's all blue lightning over there.
Hell yeah, I think he's smoking pot.
And man, I hope so, man. Hopefully he loses his bowels and takes a big old piss all over the place, man. Because man, y'all could use
Well,
it
as
just
long
like
as he
us.
keeps it behind the mountains, because my computer's out there.
Got to keep the computer out of the rain. That's for sure.
Amen to that, man. Amen to that.
Oh, there he goes again.
It's always blue though. It's something
God,
with
if you're
it's got to
out
be that
there.
camera.
Hey, question. You guys might, Glenn especially, you might be able to answer this one for me. What would cause a pickup selector on my LTD?
Oh, God struck him.
Just talking about the LTD got him. The selector switch. I'm going to think it's dirty pots just from that brief description. But when you go to slip the selector back and forth and it like either cuts out completely or doesn't switch cleanly from one to the other, you get the same thing when you go in the volume controls.
The pots are where?
The
They're
potentiometers,
in
the
switch?
volume knobs. when you go to turn the knobs, like
Oh,
and if you hear like a crunching sound, like if you go to turn the volume up and instead of going smoothly from silence to fully loud and then back down, but you hear like it cutting in and cutting out as you're going, that's a symptom of dirty pots. And usually people would blow it out with a can of air, for example, to try to clean out what's in, and just move it back and forth. Like, and that can work the issue out.
yeah.
For a selector switch, though, it depends if that's what it was doing.
Well, which would be a worse scenario? Problem with the switch or a problem with the pot? Which is easier to fix.
The one that you'd see more likely is the actual volume knob, like the dirty pots and the just moving it back and forth. Oh, he's back, but he's got to unmute again because he popped out.
God struck you down.
No, I know, and because when I bought the guitar, that was the very first thing I did. I took all the guts out, I compressed aired it, I checked the soldering and everything, I checked the insulation.
We didn't hear the end of what happened though. As soon as you mentioned the selector switch, like you froze. So like the screen froze and then you got cut off.
You were saying you were having a problem with the selector switch when you were using it.
And then he froze again.
It's a conspiracy with.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
Okay, cool. So like after the first month, the neck pickup it went dead. Like when I selected, and then after about 3 weeks, I plugged it up today, and everything works just fine. But I also know that with active guitars, it's actually a stereo input that's inside the guitar, regardless of the tip ring sleeve, 1/4 inch to go in. And I started thinking to myself, and Glenn, you might be able to answer this one really well, because the setup I was running, I was coming out of the guitar, and I was going into my PV Viper, which comes out as a stereo line out. So I was stereo lining out to a stereo into my EQ, and then I was coming out mono of the EQ to my interface. Do you think that those stereo swap overs in between might have actually done that?
I don't think it would disable the pickup like that, but as far as it could be the cables themselves, even it could be you think you're using a stereo cable here, but you're using a mono cable, so you're not getting both sides, or you're just getting the one pickup, not the other. I mean, that kind of thing can happen. I wouldn't think it. And the other thing I would think is either a potential loose wire inside the guitar, where there actually was a disconnect for that pickup at some point, and nothing that you did specifically with the connecting, but it could just be.
It fell back into place.
Exactly, it fell back into place, or you put the guitar down and it knocked back into where it needed to be, or what have you. So I would look at the wiring for that as well, just to be sure.
I was kind of thinking that same thing, because I did notice it whenever I popped the back of the selector switch off and I looked into the cavity, it looked like the main lead was short of filaments. You know what I mean? It looked like it was short of filaments and not quite soldered from the bottom down. You know what I mean?
Right.
It looked like somebody dropped solder from the top and didn't maybe even put the flux on it. And
was like when in doubt, there, I limit the chain.
Grab a multimeter.
Well, test the entire chain of the signal. The more you eliminate, the easier it is to isolate where the problem is.
Absolutely. Yeah, and luckily I went out and bought a proper multimeter last week, so I should be able to do that pretty soon. Because I'm usually all
That's the way to test the signal, right?
Yeah, I'm usually full of all kinds of wonderful tools, but my fiance, she loves tools more than I seem to, and she just loves stealing my tools. Like, it got to the point one night where I was in the bathroom going number 2, and she came to the door asking me about my tools. I said, "Babe, do me a favor." I said, "Go into my studio. Every tool you can see and every toolbox you can see with your eyes, grab it all. You can have it. Just take it. But please do not put it back in my studio." Because I was like, "What more do you want me to do?" It's like, all the tools you've taken from me, I could have gone out and done 100 jobs, but like, I don't never know where my tools are. I don't never know where my nut drivers are, and I will never know where anything is. And I'm not a bona fide mechanic, but my dad was one hell of a mechanic, and if I learned anything from him, it was organize your shit and know where your shit is.
Yep, it's important.
Yeah, that's one of the.
Hey, my dad was a carpenter. I got a barn full of shit.
Yeah, same thing, man.
Well, even just the sound stuff, like when we do the setup and the breakdown, the whole PA. And like my buddy Mike brought his son out for one of the gigs yesterday, and he was watching us, and we're putting everything back away, and everything's just got a spot. Like I know that this goes here, this goes there. It's like a Jenga thing to get everything into the Jeep, because the Jeep has everything that we need to run a show, including 5 monitors and 2 mains and 2 subs and all the cables and all just everything, all the stands, and it all fits in that Jeep. But it only fits if you do it exactly like this. Like if you have one thing that's not in the right place, all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore.
And if something doesn't work when you're setting things up, I mean, the chain of the signal between going from the mixing board to the stage to the performer is pretty straightforward. So depending on the problem, it's here, here, or here.
Right.
And a lot of these guys are using wireless also. So like, they have the wireless for their guitar and their bass, and that way it's like once they have that going, that they're good and they're set, and the Shures they work fine, so it's we have no problems with that. But the main thing was also the one time they were having issues with that, where we had to reprogram from the devices that they have on the belt, like the transmitter packs that they have, and reprogram it to the other channels or whatever, because it was having a problem from the last gig they were at, and they were 2 of them were on the same channel, and we had to fix it. But not a big deal. It's just one of those things that you need to go through.
If you've been doing live sound as long as you have, you're gonna run into the occasional like RF going on the same channels, or you're gonna pick up an airplane, or
Yep, definitely gonna pick up the FM radio whenever you're trying to play something completely different. But wireless, luckily for everybody, it's become so much more secure as of late. Those kind of things aren't really a problem anymore. Because I remember back when I bought my very first 80, I thought I was just the shit until I started hearing Metallica coming through my guitar that I didn't even know how to play that song. And I'm like, oh, wow, man, how's this supposed to pan out? Like, if I go try to lip sync this, I'm going to make an ass out of myself. It's like, I think I need to save my integrity as long as I can. So I would just let it play through. Then I would look at the sound guy kind of funny, and he would be like, just chill out, dude. I've got
at least it was Metallica.
Right? Yeah. he would just tell me in my mind, you're soloed until it's your turn. I was like, okay, that's all I got to hear. I'm like, cool. Because so long as they're not hearing it, I'm all right. Yeah, because the old wireless systems, they were a trip because they were so exciting. Because
the old ones are still some of the tried and true ones. I mean, the RF wireless, when it comes to guitars and vocalists, has not changed drastically in the last 30, 40 years.
And if you had the good quality stuff,
they had a good solid standard.
It's still as good as anything you can buy now if you have the good stuff back then.
I haven't seen any wireless technology come out since the 80s that is a real threat to the RF wireless music performance.
I don't think there's gonna be, to be honest with you. I mean, because RF
not unless they
quantumize.
Unless they take they have to take a different approach to the wireless. All these wirelesses that have come out since then they're all about data and packets and digital, whereas RF is kind of just like a wireless analog cable. It is as fast as an analog cable would be, because it's
as fast,
kind of working off the same concept.
It's
just through the air.
It's just shooting a signal. And like, I've always loved that about the old school systems, because the nice ones, the dependable and rugged ones, you were never going to go wrong with.
And they've gotten better at getting rid of like potential noise, because I remember like my guitarist and my singer when they first got theirs, and this was at the end of the 80s, and yes, picking up police transmitters and planes is a real thing.
It's a problem.
But now like they isolate they're using channels and frequencies that are really eliminating a lot of that.
And they actually have grown to where they reserve their own frequencies.
They kind of auto negotiate.
Pretty much. Like the cops will tell them, hey, in this area, here's what frequency we use for this. So you got to find something.
Plus, they've gotten them down to like as small as they can be. Those little peanuts that they have now for the guitars, like basically you just plug this little thing in here, you plug the receiver in over there, and boom,
and it's just
you're connected.
Piece. It's just this tiny little piece.
And they're like 20, 30 bucks. I mean,
I know, and it drives me nuts that I have not invested in a couple sets yet, because because it's like, dude, why worry about the potential of rolling over one of your cables with your desk chair whenever you could just spend a few bucks and have that? And it's like you never have to worry about nothing, and then you can still get up and take your guitar with you to the kitchen to go get a drink. And it's like,
To me, it's the charging thing again. Same thing with the wireless headphones, where
Yeah.
the fact that you have to charge it all the time. I mean, if you're going to go to a gig, you got to have a fully charged one with you, and technically you should have a backup or a backup cable or
I
whatever.
was
But
about to say you're best off taking two fully charged sets with you, at a gig because
Well, those little peanuts, obviously you can't change the batteries in those, so they're rechargeable.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of them would be, and that's again depending on the style. But the ones that I've seen, they're rechargeable, and again, they're not really a good way to see just looking at it. Is it charged? Is it not charged? Right. So like somebody, if they just show up at a gig and they didn't charge it, it's like, okay, now they're Russian roulette. Is it going to work? Is it going to cut out in the middle, or is it going to start disappearing during your solo? What's going to go on? So they need to make sure that they got it.
And
fully
obviously you would want to have a backup.
Yes.
well that
Always.
in worst case scenario, you have one of your stage techs or one of your band techs immediately come out after each song and give you a fresh one that's just been sitting on the charger for the equal amount of time that you just got unused in the previous one. That way, you at least get that amount of time out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for now they should be good for hours. Like you should be able to get entire gigs on just the one. So it's like unless you're getting to the point where the battery is so old or it's been used and drained so many times that it's getting a battery memory or it's just failing, what have you. It should be good for the whole time. As long as you're charged up before you go, you're good.
Right.
But that's one of those that it's just got to be part of your regimen. Like when you're
Well,
getting
your
ready, when it's a
mentality.
gig day, you make sure you're charging that sucker. Yeah.
It's like what you do with your SD cards, Glenn, when you guys are recording and making sure that you always got a pack of them like ready to switch.
Yeah, like you remember those old cigarette cases? Like they would open up a cigarette case and like pull out, from a hard case, pull a cigarette out. My buddy Mike has a thing like that for SD cards. Like you open it up and it's got 6 SD cards on this side and 6 SD cards on that side, all in their own individual, spot. So it's like, oh yeah, there's one. We'll use this one today.
Oh,
See,
that's
you
cool.
thought smoking made you look cool.
No,
My
that's
pack
cool.
has
That
SD
is-
cards.
Oh,
Yep.
that is cool, man. I want to buy a case like that and fill it with flash drives.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be cool. 'Cause,
He was
I
using
mean,
that because in the board itself, you can actually just, with the board that we were using, the Personas, you can just drop SD cards straight into the board and do the full recording from
Right.
there. But with the new one, you got the 24R, the rack mount Personas, it has the SD card slot and you can drop it in there and you can record, but you can only record a mix down. It doesn't have individual
Oh, it
tracks.
doesn't do
And
the
I was like,
individual
are you
tracks?
kidding me? Like
that's a
that's
bummer.
so harsh because like when you see the SD card, you just immediately assume, okay, multi-track recording right to the SD card, we're good.
Right.
Well,
And then you find out, only the mix down. So I have to look at that to make sure. But
That's a big feature of
It is a
the
big
Persona.
feature.
but
Like
that's why again, this one is the one that's the rack mount one. So like the front of it, all it is just 24 inputs for XLR. Yeah, that's the whole front of the thing.
so
and it's
you
rack
get
mounted. So
you get the benefit of the rack mount. You get the convenience of the smaller space and easier to
and no motorized
deal
faders,
with.
no faders to have to deal with at all.
But you do
It's-
take a kick in the balls there.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
if the multi-track recording is a part of like why you're using their
at the same
gear,
time. At the same time, he uses a laptop in like the way he has his whole rig built. He has a laptop built in. He's got a wireless router built in. He's got everything all right there. You can just bring up Studio One on the laptop and record the multi-session right in.
Oh,
So
router.
You,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
do it
So-
that way.
so
It's just not to the SD card directly.
maybe
So
that's why they felt like they didn't need to include it as a feature on the rack mount.
they figure you're going to go bring it into the software. And
The
do it
same
that
thing
way.
within the synthesizer world, like all my rack versions of my old Rolands, they all have some limitation there when it comes to output. Like the keyboard version of the D50 had like 8 outs and all sorts of extra bells and whistles. The rack mount version, 2 outs.
Right. Because they're assuming you're using it differently because it's a rack mount device. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
It does.
Same sounds though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same
And that's the whole thing is like, do you need everything that you can just get to right there from the keyboard while you're on stage, for example, or do you just need to be able to access it through controls and whatnot through the software?
Right, and sometimes, the cost savings really is worth it because I got that rack mount for $100 and the keyboard version was $800.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't need to
Yeah.
pay $700 for a keyboard. I already got some.
Yep.
That's just like the one I told you about that I've got, Tony. That Casio Privia that was 750 brand new or whatever, and then I got it off that dude here in Tyler, Texas for $50, and it's 88 weighted keys.
Damn.
It's
The
mini.
88 keys weighted alone is well worth $50. Like I would
Oh,
buy
dude,
it for
dude,
$50 just to have a spare weighted keyboard.
yeah. Like I mean, my God, 88 weighted keys and the unit works. That's worth $400.
Yeah.
I started showing you this one before, right? The
Oh no, I haven't seen that. What is that?
That's
the Axiom 25. Yeah.
Oh,
And these
dude,
are
that's
it's only two
badass.
octaves. It's only 2 octaves, but they're semi-weighted keys
That's still cool as hell, though, man.
and good
What
control.
else?
This one's Joey's. I'm just borrowing it to check it out.
I
So
was
is that-
gonna
so is that
say,
like a-
when did you get that, Glenn?
So is that a
I-
controller?
Glenn got an
or strictly
Axiom, and I didn't know.
I have the M Audio back there. Is the one I usually use. The Carbon or the Carbon C61. This one's the
Yeah.
M Audio Axiom.
I got two of those carbons.
Is
Over
that
here's the
a-
Casio CTK.
Is that Axiom controller as well, or is it strictly?
It's controller as well. Yep.
Yeah, the
Nice.
Axioms are nice. I mean, especially for the price that they're selling them for.
The other thing was the outs, like the MIDI controls in the back, or the
Yeah,
MIDI,
yeah.
MIDI
and,
in out, as well as
and
USB.
they actually still have the old school MIDI. I mean,
Yep.
the truth is you're not likely to ever need to use the old school MIDI outs and
But
ins,
to have the option.
but to have the option is still good.
Yes.
It's got the little touch pads, which is awesome. That's the main thing I really wanted to check it out for, is being able to do the drumming on the actual little pads.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that's what.
and those pads, the M Audio pads, are the other reason why they're worth it for the price.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Y- You get pads that are as good as the Akai's, and some of those other digital drum pads. You get the same quality pad out of those, but for hundreds.
there you go.
less.
Yeah. See,
The
here's
16 pads.
Yeah, here's my. Akai
That's the
Twitch.
one you beat on, huh?
Yes, that's my drum set right there. And then
Sweet.
here's my Novation Impulse 49, and damn, it's not mirroring, but yeah, it's got
8 pads there, yeah.
Just like it's got the pads, and then I've got my pan knobs right here, and then over here I've got my faders. And
Yeah,
I
and
got
those
my-
Novations are wildly popular. Joe's
that-
got
yeah,
one of those.
and they're good because they come pre-programmed with like 8 or 9 different DAWs, like auto maps. But
Nice.
they did away with auto map support, so they did a workaround. And I've got all the information on it.
Well,
I got- that's-
you know the cool thing with mapping nowadays, and you'll notice this with every good DAW. There's a learning option in the DAWs.
Yeah,
So when it comes
yeah.
to mapping keys,
you can make it whatever you want it.
all you got to do is go into learn mode, and
And hit a
while it's in
key.
learn mode,
Can you
hit
find
a
the thing and
button.
wiggle it? Then you're good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hit a button.
Yeah.
Once you do, tell me that you hit the button, and now that button is mapped.
And like you were showing us a second ago, Glenn, with the Axiom, like just like this little launch key. Oh shit! Whoops. Thank
It
God it's a
used to
cheap
work.
iPhone. Well, that one will still work. That one will still work. Otherwise, I'd be in tears.
It's like Blair
Yeah.
Witch in the studio. Sorry that I went out into the studio. You got to get your nose all runny.
Oh God, I know, right? The Impulse, it has the same thing as this for a sustain pedal, but it's also got an expression pedal as well as the two old 13-pin MIDI in and outs, and like that's killer. And it's got the USB over MIDI, so it's
Nice.
like you can't beat that. It's kind of almost just like your M Audio. It's just got more keys because
Yeah.
other than that, it's got. Does that M Audio got faders?
Let's see. It's got
Oh, the
8
Axiom, yeah,
knobs.
should
This
have
one's
a
got-
couple of faders. A lot of them come with 8 or 16 these days.
Actually, this one's got 8 knobs up here.
Yeah,
Only one fader that I see over here.
is that master fader?
Master fader, yeah.
That's cool.
And then you got the 8 buttons over there, the pads, I should say.
Yeah, you still can't beat that. Like, I never could quite get into 8 pads for the drums just because, like, as Tony will tell you, like, 8 pads and me playing drums ain't gonna work. Like, he's heard me play.
Yeah.
You've heard me play these.
And
things.
you do kind of, I could see you needing like 16 up and down because
I'm thinking about. I'm
you
thinking
try
about,
to, you really do try to play like a natural drummer would with his kit, which
Right.
means you do need 4 layers of
right
variation.
That's why I'm
With the
thinking
eight,
about
with,
buying a
with the
second one.
8s, you basically got 2 4s
I'm thinking about buying a second one of these.
Nice.
That way I can link them and have 32 pads.
There was one actually that was a super small, like it was essentially 8 pads like that, but
Yeah.
the entire thing was basically the size of the 8 pads and an extra maybe 2 inches on the one side. But like the whole thing was only, the whole device was only like that big.
Yeah, I'm trying. I know
But
which one you're talking about.
The connection actually broke. I have it in the other room over here. The when Joey gave, it was another thing that Joey had for me to check out. And when I was looking at it, like I go to plug it in, and there's just nothing to plug the power into. It's like the USB connection just kind of goes into like a hole, and it's just there.
It's only USB powered.
Yeah, and that connection is what broke. So it's like that's going to be a solder fix, but I can get that soldered and get it back in there and get it working again. But the question is how well I can solder it in there. Is it going to be in there soldered solidly enough to be able to hold that cable fine and all that? So
I'm always USB surgery, because Glenn, we've had a couple people come in here with USB problematic equipment and like, can I fix it? And
that was for you, Angie. That was for you, Angie. That was just for you, Angie.
Raj just snorted Angie up.
Well, no, because she made it known that she could see up my nose, so I made sure that she got.
He's making sure she gets a good view.
Yeah,
she's staring at your brain.
Well, no, she sent me a text message last meeting of like, I don't even know how she got the picture. I was like, how are you sending me this picture?
She's got ways.
No, trust me, she's a female and a smart one, and is determined one. I know she's got ways. Like, like that's why it's better to be friends with those. Yeah, like be good to those, because you don't never want to know what's gonna happen if you're not. Yeah, because my God, yeah, because she sent me a picture that I don't even know how she got, but it was me. I had these little, they were these things you buy from like Brookshire's. They're basically for people that type a lot and stuff. They're like finger condoms. That's what they look like. But they do me good when I'm playing the drum machine, because they take.
I would imagine they would.
Yeah, they help some of the absorption of the impact. I don't know how the hell she got this picture, but during our last meeting, she sent me a text message during the meeting of a picture of me with my hand right in front of my console with those things on my fingers about to play drums. So I'm like, girl, where you at? Girl, where you at?
Where you hiding? Come on.
Yeah, where you hiding, man? Come give me a hug already, because I know you ain't in Pennsylvania.
Another thing, Raj, that might be interesting for the way you do your digital drums. They have these MIDI rings. Last year, me and Glenn were looking at different MIDI devices like air sticks, and they have these rings that are actually MIDI rings. Some performers will put them on all their fingers.
They're about that big around. Oh, MIDI.
No. These are finger rings.
Okay.
And you can put them on each finger. And the cool thing about it is it picks up like the actual location of the ring as you're playing. Some keyboardists use it like a mod wheel, like with the ring on their finger. They'll hit the key, and they'll flick their hand, and the ring being on their hand as they're playing turns in. You can program it, so like some of them would use it as a mod wheel, so they would literally like push their hands up and back, like without having to use a mod wheel. Now
I was thinking of a theremin too.
Think of that with your digital drums. If you had MIDI rings,
I could do.
You could actually hit a cymbal and pinch it. Yeah, just like you would with a regular drum, but you flick it, and the ring actually picks up.
And that would keep me from having to have 32 pads, because if I could choke just by a simple fucking just jerk of my hand or whatever,
it would allow you to programmatically adjust the sample. So like the same sample that might be playing in a wide open snare, as you flick it that way, turns into a muted snare.
Yeah.
Or a tap, like a side hit.
Or like anything, rim shot, like a snare stick, and
that means one pad can actually be like 3-4 different versions of that same sound.
If I could get that with those things, man, like that would seriously expand my drum capabilities, because that's the one thing I'm not able to do real easily right now is hit quick chokes.
Well, plus you got to use both your hands. Like the way you're playing, you really need both your hands on top of those pads.
Absolutely.
You can't afford to like have one hand going off to the side to modulate and do that. So
be able
being
to
able
have
to
them
keep your hands in
rings
place
and
and
just be able to slide it a certain way, move my finger a certain way or my hand a certain way, and catch that desired effect. Yeah, because
that's
like
something I've been considering them. I don't know where I'd use them in because as piano, like I don't tend to modulate and use the mod wheel, but with the synth sounds and
right.
strings and
If
swells and
if
things
you
like
could,
that.
If you could send me a link for those, if you could
I actually just
remember.
did a quick search right here just for on Google for MIDI ring controller, and
Beautiful.
there's a bunch of them that came up. This
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised
Enhancia
if several
Neova is one of
companies
them.
are
Wave.
getting into this
So just
market.
look up MIDI ring control then, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, it even auto completed for me. I did MIDI ring and then controllers what came up, and some of these are like $380 or
That's
280
yeah.
somewhere in that range. Some's from Roland, some from Reverb.
I mean,
yeah.
let's face it.
It started as a Kickstarter.
Yep.
The first company that did it, they started as a Kickstarter with just an idea, and they got like support, showed the concept, built it, and I wouldn't be surprised now that you have all sorts of big MIDI companies like, oh yes, we will make the MIDI ring, but I got to give credit to the original guys who thought that
Yeah,
up. It
because
was
man, that's a fabulous. That's a tool. That that
that's
that,
a
that
21st century
yes,
MIDI controller.
that's a progressive tool right there. That's something that yes makes better makes helps you make better music with
and
less
and think about it,
resources.
that doesn't have to just be for like keyboards and digital drums.
It could be
I
for
could see
everything.
uses for that, like with guitar and
Yeah, yeah, because you know the band Muse, their bass player he uses an entire sweep pad as well as a MIDI controller board as well as his conventional pickups all on the same bass guitar, and
Nice.
he does wicked stuff that should not be able to be done on a bass guitar, and like he'll do these like they're almost like the hip hop swirls where it's like blah 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 blah, and he could it's like a sweep pad underneath the strings with the pickups underneath the strings also, and then he's also got a velocity pad right at the tip of his fretboard or a pick guard, and this guy's able to get some seriously amazing, just productions out of his bass guitar, and like because Muse is only a three-piece band, but if any of you have ever heard them live,
hey,
oh my
Rush proved
god.
to me that like
Yeah.
three piece don't mean small sound.
No, not at all. And in my opinion, Muse is nowhere near as technically advanced as Rush was, but they do create more noise for three guys than I've ever heard any other three piece ever do in my life.
And how about ZZ Top?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh dude, they were
Another good
special,
wall of
dude.
sound.
See,
Yeah,
I
they were
think when you
special.
are in a three-piece band, the challenge is there to kind of
Yes.
like be
Every
more.
everybody kick ass, yeah. Like everybody's got to be a shining
And,
star in a three
and
piece.
obviously, the bassist needs to be able to sing
Yeah, yeah.
because I mean, guitars can make good singers, but
But
I've never seen great guitar in a band along with a great singer coming
very,
from the same person. Like
very
you can be a
rarely.
great singer or you can be a great guitarist, but you can't be both at the same time
Yeah,
because it's
very
it's
rarely will you
hard
find
to
that.
do great guitar parts and sing the melody lines because they don't tend to actually complement each other to do at the same time.
Chris Cornell was one of my favorite examples of a great guitarist and great singer, because people tended to fucking undercut him for his guitar skills, but the man was really a
Well,
wonderful.
he
He was a
was
great guitar player.
renowned for his singing skills.
Yeah, and so yeah, his vocals overshadowed his guitar prowess, but his guitar prowess was quite something to behold. It was, and especially once you start listening to his solo music without Soundgarden, without Audio Slave, just him, man. Like it, it wasn't until I was turned on to his own solo music until I really understood Chris Cornell,
Yeah.
and
It
like
for him showing his abilities across different bands, across different projects, that was a necessity for an artist like that.
yeah,
Otherwise, you wouldn't have known how great of an artist he was if you
nah.
only knew him from one
Soundgarden
aspect.
or Audio Slave, yeah, like you had to know, you had to follow him, or you at least had to be exposed to him by others during his whole
And he was one of those artists that couldn't do everything he wanted to do in one place.
right.
That's when you realize like I need to find some other bandmates for this stuff.
Yep. And he just so happened to be at the right place at the right time for that. In Seattle, whenever that whole scene was just booming, like because they had Mudhoney, they had uh,
I
Screaming
think he was a
Trees.
big part of the reason why that Seattle movement, it wasn't just Nirvana.
Oh no, everybody knew that Chris was the actual driving force behind the power within that scene. It's just that Nirvana they caught on to their moment at their moment, and it stuck.
Well,
And
and their influence in that area, like why other bands were starting to sound that way and go that way was because their influence was grassroots.
yeah, very much so because they were into Mudhoney, they were into the Melvins, and like none of those guys were from around there. I mean, Mudhoney was, but like still, like that's extremely contrasting music compared to what Nirvana actually released. But it was because of that influence that they went that route. And it's amazing in music to see that because a lot of the times you'll see interviews with people where they ask the artist, so what are your influences or this or that? And the artist will answer, and their influences are nothing like what they write and record. And you'll see the
Yeah.
interviewer become flabbergasted. And it's like, it's not a, if how to
But
explain it?
that brings up the question: should your music sound like your influences?
It's going to.
It typically does. Yeah, like
It's,
it should, but
it's, it's like,
not like I know some of the things that I write aren't coming from some of my influences. Like my influences don't always bleed through on the stuff I write. Sometimes I don't know what
right.
the hell I'm writing.
Yeah, my influences rarely bleed through on what I'm writing because, like, for the most part, I don't really listen to much music anymore, other than classic stuff, older stuff that I love.
Yeah,
That
there's a lot less influence these days.
exactly. There's
I'm
just
more
not
influenced by some of the band lab artists these days, thanks to Ange.
Yeah.
some of them,
Like
yes, some of them,
that
yes.
gets me like thinking I wanna write this kind of way than anything I'm hearing commercially.
Yeah, because you're right. A lot of the artists on the lab, they definitely they pique me. They get me excited. They get me motivated, and they get me thinking on another level, and I love it. But then on the other hand, there are some artists who go so far beyond the point of reality with what they actually lay down and publish that it's like, guys, it's like this is another one of those things like Jason told me one time. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "you may record the way you do." He goes, "but one thing I do know that's mighty impressive is you could go out tonight and play it on stage right now."
Yeah.
And
Yep.
there's a lot of cats on Band Lab that can't
And
say
he's
that.
smart like that. Like I asked him once too. Uh, the answer he gave me was, if I can't play it live on stage, I
Don't need
don't write it.
don't don't need to record it. Yeah, you don't need to publish it. Yeah,
He does try to write what he can
Compl-
perform,
yeah,
which, like, for me, there's things that I like I might have to punch in some of the parts that I need to do because I may never get my fingers conditioned to play the progressive kind of classical music that I hope to reach someday.
right. Like surprisingly, I'm pretty good at a piano, and I only got that way because when I was 14 years old, my stepmother had a Yamaha Clavinova at the
Oh,
house, and
that
she
was
she
one of my
was
first digital pianos.
beautiful piece of gear, beautiful, just wonderful gear. I loved it, and she only showed me a couple little things, and she played okay, but this was right around the same time that I started actually learning how to play guitar, not just have a guitar and pick strings and just saying I'm playing it. But it was at the time where I was actually starting to learn how to transpose, understand my chords and things like that. And so when I would want to play something on piano, I would transpose straight from the guitar. I would look at my guitar. If I'm holding an E minor,
That's
well,
a good
there's a E.
approach.
Yeah, there's an E, there's a B, there's a E, there's a G, there's a B, there's a E. Find them all right there. And then that's where I'd go from. And I learned so many acoustic guitar covers. Like I could play a beautiful version of Tears in Heaven on piano because I learned it strictly by transposing directly from Eric Clapton's version. You know
You
what I
also
mean?
get very nice arrangements with the chords doing it that
Yep.
way.
You
Because
do, you do,
if you
because
just looked at the chord, charts and said, okay, this is a C, this is a G, and this is a D, you're playing it a certain way. But if you look at the notes on the guitar, you're getting much
yeah,
fuller chords that get cover
yeah,
a lot
'cause
more
y'all
ground.
Yeah,
touched
the
on that.
guitar fills out those chords so nice
Yeah, I remember you guys touching on that a
when you
couple
can
months back.
strum.
And yeah, because you can hit an open string, an open G, while you're hitting a C on your E on your low E, while you're hitting an E on the A string, and while you're hitting a what's that going to be a B on the D string, and then leave that G string open, and that's such a beautiful chord. It's a melancholy yet hopeful yet pure chord, and it's very suspended, so it leaves you a lot of breathing room, and it allows you to go to a lot of different places just on the drop of a dime. And all it is just a C with a minor augmentation to it. And it's like, but yeah, but if you try to do that straight on the piano without coming from the guitar first, it would never cross your mind. You know what I
Or
mean?
you don't appreciate the chord as much. It goes to what we were saying earlier when it comes to like arranging and doing an acoustic version and a heavy version and feeling the same thing from different directions.
Yep, it
Same
sure
thing with
does.
the spread voicings, like we were saying with the guitar. That direct translation from the guitar gets you much more spread voicing, where you're covering very low notes, very high notes, and you're getting them all in there, even though you're covering the same note two, three times.
Yeah, you approach those chords differently on a guitar than you would on a piano.
The other
Absolutely.
side of that is the crunch chords, where you could take something like like take a C9 or whatever. Like take something that's got a C in it, it's got the D an octave higher in there. Well, if you brought
Right.
that D down and you played it right next to the C, it's going to sound awful. But they like in some cases you can get away with a crunch chord, where you're bringing all the notes into a very small space and trying
Yeah.
to crunch them together like that. You get
And
a
if
very
you,
different feel than if you spread them all out.
especially if you use it right in the mid range of the keyboard, like
Right.
because you'll catch the actual emotion from it. You won't catch the bass, you won't catch the treble notes, you'll catch the feeling from it. Again, that's why I admire a lot of church piano players from black churches,
Oh yeah.
because they hit chords that are just so god awful
Gospel
beautiful.
organ.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
and the piano players. It's like they hit notes, and they do it with such ease and grace and finesse. Even the younger guys, because one of my best friends in the world, his father's a deacon, his mother's the lady of the church. They own the church, and all of his cousins are in the church band. And when I get to sit and watch them play, I feel like nothing. I feel like a nobody. I'm like, wow, this is just a family doing what a family does on a Sunday afternoon, and
And
they're
they're tight
doing
together, right?
they're tight together, that and it just sounds beautiful, and it's so well choreographed, and half the time they're making the stuff up.
Well,
And
and
it
that's music being done in celebration, which is why I
yes,
always love gospel and
yes,
any kind of
celebration, any kind,
any kind of I don't want to say religious music, but music
but
that is based off of like,
the soul, the
celebration and worship
yeah,
always has a glorious sound to it. It's
yeah,
meant to.
yeah, the celebration of the soul, the celebration of our
Hallelujah.
yeah,
Like the
it
song was written to be
man,
glorious.
I've got a cover from a friend of mine, Taylor Tobias, down in Houston, Texas. He used to do a program called Saturday Morning Sessions, and he has a really decent rehearsal space at his property. And he did one morning. He did Hallelujah, and it was the most beautiful version I'd ever heard done. And it was the most simple version because it was the closest to the original that I'd ever heard anybody do. And generally, when you hear somebody basically playing the exact same thing that somebody already did, you're kind of like, "Hey, yeah, you did a good job, but you didn't surprise me." You
Well,
know,
it's one of those songs that like each
it,
person who does it can be a totally different flavor.
yes, and when I seen him do that, I was like, Taylor, I was like, dude, you got to get me as many of your secure videos as possible that you would like to be heard, because I promise you I can find a platform, dude, because you're a wonderful musician. You play with different musicians every week that you've never played with, and y'all always seem to come out with something beautiful, and it's always classy, and it's always appropriate, and it's never lewd. It's never anything you wouldn't let your kids hear. You know what I mean? And yet at the same time, it's something that still inspires adults who have been through lewd lives, who have seen some of the things that we probably shouldn't have seen, and done things we might not have should have done. and it still brings people like us back to feeling youthful again, back to
Yeah.
feeling hopeful again, because that's the biggest thing for me, and with any kind of music. I pray that whatever music I come across till the day I die gives me hope.
Mhm.
You know what I
And
mean?
any music I write, I pray that it connects.
Yes.
Otherwise, if my music doesn't connect to anybody, then I did not do what I wanted to do as a
Right,
musician.
right. Because like I used to be as a younger cocky jackass. I used to be the guy that was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm flashy. Of
I'm
course I'm the
still a
best."
young cocky jackass. I just
Yeah, me
have gray
too.
hair.
Me too. I just try to show more humility these days because I know that now that I know the crowd that I know now, I just know that there's that many more people out there that are not only better than me, they are better than me. Like, and it's like, for a long time,
Well, and
I
people being better musicians than you should never slow you down. Like
no,
I,
that's what
I
should speed
I'm
you
not
up.
doing it because I want to be the best. I'm not doing it because I want to be better than anybody.
No,
I'm
I
okay
just want to be the
with
best I can be. I just
Mhm.
want to
Yep.
be as good as I can be. That way I can express as much as I possibly can the way I want to express it. And because yeah, because like the saying goes, if you want to be a winner, surround yourself with winners.
Yeah.
If you want to
That's a
learn how
big
to
one. Yeah.
yeah, if you want to learn how to play better, find a better player to hang out with. You know, and don't take it personal because there's no reason to because
and if you want to have a voice, find your voice.
mm-hmm,
Or at
mm-hmm.
least figure out what the hell you're going to say when you do.
Yep. Because I remember when I was 15 years old, this guy Lee Rice, he was 2 years older than me, and he was a god. He was an honest to god guitar phenomenon. Like this guy could, he would shred it, and he knew everything. And I didn't know jack shit. I didn't know my ass from my elbow. But every Friday night, I would go to his house, and we'd sit and get drunk on 40s or whatnot, and he would be shredding this and that, and I would just be like, "Damn, Lee, I wish I could play like you, man." And he finally broke down one night. He goes, "Roger," he goes, "Let me tell you something, man." He goes, "Dude, I may be a technically extremely proficient guitar player." He goes, "But here's the thing: people are gonna remember your solos. People are gonna remember the shit you write." And when he told me that, it dumbstruck me because I was like, "Thank you so much." I was like, "You don't know what that means to me, man," because that tells me it's okay to not be the technically best musician,
Yeah.
but so
and,
long
and
as
that's
you,
a great point. As a musician, what do you want people to remember of your
yeah,
music?
how
Ask
fat
yourself that.
how fast you played
Ask yourself that when you're
or the
making your
way you
music.
made them feel. Yeah.
Right.
And I want people to remember the way I made them feel when they heard my music.
Yeah.
Like because there was a slight period where I got on the Ingve kick with Lee, the same guy, and
Oh,
I
I
was
went
like,
through my Ingve kick too.
yeah, and then it was only a couple months later I realized I will never be Ingve, and like because like him or hate him, he's Ingve Malmsteen. There is no other Ingve. Like that dude's a monster.
Shit, I
And
just wanted to play like his keyboardist, and I couldn't even
dude,
do
his
that.
keyboardist was a beast, man.
Yeah, his keyboardist was as good as him. That's why
Yeah,
he probably picked him.
yeah, like his keyboardist, in my opinion, was better than the homeboy from Dream Theater. Like, and that
Yeah,
dude,
it's a close
that's
call
that's a
there.
close
That
one.
those would be the two sickest keyboardists
Yeah,
that
yeah. You know who else had a really great keyboardist, and it wasn't the original keyboardist of the band. It was the second keyboardist that the Steve Miller band got, the black guy. He was,
Steve Miller Band. Love some of that.
yeah, he was amazing. I took
yeah,
some,
and there it's more like organ and honky tonk.
yeah, and I took some acid one night and went down to watch the Steve Miller concert.
Well, no wonder he's so great.
Oh, but no, well, no, it was bittersweet. It was bittersweet because whenever it came time for him to do his solo, just everybody gets their solo time, and when it came time for him to do his, he had been keeping up just like the guy previous, and he had been kicking ass just like the guy previous. But when it came time for him to do his solo, suddenly racism came into the picture, and the crowd started fucking heckling him, and I'm just like, I don't understand you guys. This dude is actually probably better than the last guy.
And if there's one place that racism has no need to be, it's in music
Music.
because I'm
Yeah.
sorry, music does not see in color,
No,
music sees in
the
sound.
yeah, music is a universal language to all of us. Like it's the one thing that unites us all. Because
One thing for me in the beginning with music, like in the beginning of playing music more in the last 15, 20 years, I started in with listening to the blues is why I kind of homed in on at one point. And I had never really been big on the blues. It was more jam band and Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin,
I'm
like all that
surprised
kind
you
of
don't
stuff.
have a blues side, considering you're dead
That's
and
funny because I
fish.
started off on blues. The blues
And that's
is
the thing is,
my
I did go for a couple of years on the blues, and that was just the very beginning. And it was basically through my TV, through the cable. There's like music channels where it's just no commercials, just nonstop music all day.
yeah, like the 700s through 800s or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just found the blues channel there, and I just I'm just going to jump in. So I just hit that, started listening to it, and because it is such a simple form, right? The blues in general, but there's so much you can do with it. That's the thing to me is like it's a way of learning a very very specific small set of rules that you can really then branch out and just listen to all these different sides of everything.
Yeah,
And
you
blues
within the
helps you
blues.
with expression. Like
Yes.
Yes,
it's a simple form as far as the scales and the chords,
but
but
the
it's
expressiveness
all
of it.
expression.
Yeah,
And that's the whole key is like what they can do with 4 notes. Like you can get entire solos, like BB King, entire solos where he's only playing
said
4 notes through the whole thing, but
You said it.
killing it and saying
Most
so
of
much.
the 20th century of blues
That's
was
what
done
that
in
was.
4
Yeah,
notes.
yeah. Really, until Stevie Ray came. I mean, Eric Clapton, yeah, but until Stevie Ray came along, that's when the virtuoso of blues happened. Was Stevie Ray, but because before that, Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix were your next two best things. And in my opinion, Jimi Hendrix.
Well, Hendrix
was
got
a
you
monster.
thinking like
Hendrix was a beast.
what he did to blues, what Hendrix did to everything he played. He made you think of any genre in a way that like this genre can really go anywhere.
Yeah,
He was experimental
and
to the extreme.
did, and he did it with such class and finesse and panache. On top of that,
He
and he did
he
it
made
with,
it look so easy that
oh well,
like
I mean, he
you
had
almost believed like, damn, just give me a guitar, I'm ready to go.
yeah, and it's like in reality, them damn Wilt Chamberlain link fingers of his, yeah, like you couldn't argue with those. Like that man
Shit,
had so
even
much.
his tongue
I
could
know, like his thumb would hang halfway over the fretboard while he was still fretting chords over here, and it was like Stevie Ray didn't even do that. And Stevie Ray had monster hands, and for such a small guy, especially.
Stevie was good at the feel part of it. Like that's
Stevie,
why he got so much attention for his sound. Is
and in my
could
opinion, he
emote it.
was the most expressive blues player in my opinion that has graced us so far. Jimmy was expressive, but it wasn't all blues. You know what I mean? Stevie Ray was just as expressive as Jimmy, but it was all blues. You know?
Yeah.
And I've never heard anybody before or after be that expressive with blues. Like Kenny Wayne, he had a good first album.
Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
He's a monster.
Yeah.
He is a savage. He is a savage. Because and he didn't I don't think he got his proper credit for his first 2 albums because I don't think the record label really allowed him to.
Well,
to
he
open up.
does have respect among his peers.
Yes.
That's what I would give him props for.
Well,
Like
Kenny
he's
Wayne's
underrated in the commercial market world just because they don't know what real blues is.
Exactly.
But he's got the respect of his peers.
Because if you ever go watch him live, you don't leave dissatisfied. Promise you that. Kenny Wayne is a monster.
Yeah.
And
I remember how blown away I was by Blue on Black, like the first time I heard it.
Yeah, and what really got me about that track was the solo sounded so simple that I immediately went home. I was like, I can play this. I had no clue at the difficulty of what he was really doing. He was hitting one note, and then it would hit the same note again, but with a different finger, and then do a bend with that finger, and then come back down with the other finger on the same note. And it's like, so you're hitting the same fret, same string with 2 fingers 4 different times and getting different sounds out of all of it.
4
that makes
different
sense.
ways.
Yeah, and it was like, Kenny Wayne, I think I don't know if I played you that Aberdeen track, the one that he did on his second album. It was a remake of the original of Aberdeen, where he basically I don't think he used a dobro. I think he just used an acoustic, but he put it on his lap and a big guitar, and he went after it.
Oh, he lapped it?
Yeah, and once I heard that, I had to do it. Like, so I do that song nowadays too.
Yeah, you ever play flat?
Yeah, that's the song. Yeah, I could do it right now if you wanted to. Yeah, that's the one that I like to play is that Aberdeen, and I use a Bic lighter and I lay the acoustic flat.
There it is. Yeah,
and,
the Bic lighter makes a good fretter. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, because I've got this fat gauge Dunlop over here somewhere. It's a big boy, but it's kind of a big boy. You know what I mean? It's a little thick, and my fingers are just the right thickness to where the next size down ain't big enough, but the one that I bought was just a little too big. So it's like, yeah, so I might stick to the big because, like, yeah, that's what I use. Big, flat down is go at it. And
Shit, you got some claws, boy. I thought Glenn had fucking monster hands. The two of you could go at it.
I do have bear claws. I do have bear claws. They're short. They're short fingers, but they're
Yeah,
flat.
that's how mine are. They're
And they're
they're stubby.
strong. Yeah, like the only thing that I get down, I don't get down on myself about it because it's just part of
Yeah, you work with what you got.
Mhm.
well, it's just part of getting older, anyways. Like, because when you're younger and you're playing metal 5 nights a week and you're going and you're practicing during the day, each one of those 5 days, yeah, you're gonna have a muscle on your thumb right here that protrudes out like a tumor. And I had that for decades. Yeah, I had on those. Yeah, I had balls. Like females would approach me at my shows and be like, "You have the most beautiful hands. If you come home with me tonight," and I'm like, "Really? I'll be
Palmolive. That's what you should have said. Palmolive.
Hand modeling.
all I knew how to say was, "Hey, just drop your number up here in the tip jar."
There you go.
And then they got to
Nice and
see
easy.
they got to feel the protrusions later on that night. Yeah, 'cause for the longest time, it used to be crazy because people would be like, "Dude, flex your pick muscle," and I would, and they would try their hardest to hit it, and they couldn't get it to flinch, and it was like it was stout for a long time. But once I got more into production and actually being in the box and being behind the consoles and stuff, let's face it, you can only wear so many hats before all of them diminish in quality. And then you got to go back to one and refocus, get good, and start over. Just keep the process going. And so, yeah, because like that's my biggest guilty sin now is I don't practice guitar enough.
So that's one of those things where it is kind of a perishable skill where the knowledge is still there.
Yeah,
But if you take too much time away from it, then you don't have the endurance when you come back to it. You're either going to shred your fingers up and start bleeding or
yeah,
rip
if
your calluses off, all that.
If I miss 2 days of practice, if I miss 2 days of playing guitar, it takes me the next week to get back into recording. You know what I mean? Quality. Yeah, and it's a bummer. Whereas in the past, I could never have fathomed that. I could anytime, any day, any day of the week. Let's go record. I'm on point. I'm on time with the cue. Let's go. But now
That's why there
it's
was one exercise that one of the guys did where it's basically just a chromatic exercise, but it's a little
Spider?
5 minute, almost a spider walk. Yeah, similar to a spider walk where you're just doing you're just doing a little thing like that and just moving it up from the first through the fourth fret up to the ninth through the 12th, and then you go to the next string and do the same thing. And the idea is it's just a 5 minute thing. You don't have to think about it. You can do it while watching TV or whatever.
Are you talking about the one where, let's say, you start on the fifth with your index, you go to the sixth on the A with your middle, and then the ring on the third, or the D string on the seventh, and the eighth fret on the G string with your pinky? Like
No, that's a little bit more complicated. That's more for the
Arpeggio.
string switching and all that. This is more just staying on one string even and just like where you're doing like a 1 2 1 2 3 2 3 4 3 2
Oh
1 2
yeah,
3
no,
4.
that's an excellent one. That's an
And
excellent one.
and you're working on the speed for the picking as well. And then when you're going back
Yes.
down, like I'm a lot faster on the way up and slower on the way down. So that's where I
Same
can
here.
see
Same
my
here.
speed change right there. But
You know who helped me a lot with the going down part was Ben Eller on YouTube. Like he's a phenomenal guitar player, and like he really explains it in ways that are so simple to understand that like you actually learn from the guy quickly, and he doesn't teach you in a way to where if you were to go and play it, everybody'd be like, oh, you just ripped off Ben Eller. No, he doesn't do that to you. Like he teaches you ways to make it your own and
Right.
easy ways to make it your own. And man, like that helps me progress a lot too, because he does this one thing that's so god awfully stupidly simple. But
And
if you do, if
what
you do
is
it
ripping
right,
off these days in music?
what do you mean?
Because, well, riffing, technically no musician has ownership of riffs or chords. You really can't rip people off playing the same chords.
Nope,
It's
it's
all
been
about
done.
it's all about what you put into those chords.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why you're not ripping off somebody unless you are trying to sound exactly like them, in which
Exactly.
case then you're not putting any of you into it.
Right.
Right.
In which case you might get sued. Yeah.
Well, suit or not, like if you want to get respect as as a like individual musician, as a
Have your
guitarist,
integrity.
you
Keep your
can't just
integrity.
sound like Eddie Van Halen. You have to
That's right.
eventually sound like yourself.
That's
You want
right.
to try to take the ingredients that they put into that song and add, using your own style and
Do
put it in
you
there. So
on
you're
it.
making sure you're getting
Yeah.
enough of you in there. Yeah.
Because I know
All the
like
bands
a
I
lot
work with, they want to get do covers, but do covers our way. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, same here. Because like if I do a cover, I'm only gonna do it if I can own it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not gonna
You
try to go
should
out.
own it.
Yeah, because
You,
like all my
it,
acoustic work, like I do a lot of Chris Cornell's acoustic stuff, and I will outright own that shit because of the way he allowed it to be owned by others. Because every
yeah.
time he did it differently.
Well,
You know what I mean?
he wrote it so that you could own it when you play it because he owned it when he wrote it.
And
Like
and
he
he never played it the same twice.
it wasn't about the notes, it wasn't about the chords, it
It
was
was
about the
about
performance.
yeah, it was about the performance and the overall effect it had on you. And that's one thing I loved about his stuff is he never really played anything twice the same way, no matter how many times he played it. Like you could hear him play, like a stone 100 times and it'll never sound the same. You could hear him sing "I'm the Highway" 100 times, never sound the same. "Black Hole Sun," same thing. Everything he did, you
See,
could
and
hear
that
him.
can be tricky for a musician. Um, when you can't play the same thing twice the exact same way. I have that problem. Like every time I go to play every day, I'm in a different mood. Like the same progression
Yeah,
doesn't sound the exact same because I'm in a different mood.
yeah, we talked about that too. Yeah, we talked about that the other day because that's the truth too, man. Because like I'll play "Like a Stone" one day one way, like I'll grab the piano and play "Like a Stone" on the piano. Then the next day I'll play it on the acoustic guitar, and it's two totally different performances, two totally different methods of doing it, but yet they're both equally as powerful. And so long as you own it and you just you don't have any fear while doing it, you're gonna come out on top, and people will appreciate it
Yeah,
because
and that can be challenging if you write that awesome song and then you're touring or you're out there and everybody's like play that song and they want to hear it that way and it's like, oh well, that's the way it sounded in the studio, but
yeah,
tonight I'm gonna adjust the solo a little bit.
because a lot of people would harp on Chris for that, and it's like, dude, don't y'all understand that the stuff you hear him putting out in the studio is almost impossible for any human to do night after night? Like, this man hits uber octave. He hits 5 octaves for crying out loud for one, which is almost impossible.
Yeah,
And
especially for a male.
yeah, and then on top of that, he lets out a roar like Mufasa chasing after Simba from Uncle Scar. Yeah, like, and you can't do that every night without killing yourself, you know? It's like you're going to blow your vocals out if you do that every single night to that type of
Not to mention you
perfection.
have to put yourself into that zone every night, which,
Yeah.
I don't care how committed you are to music, you can't be on even 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
You're gonna
Cuz
have off nights.
yeah, cuz like that song Cochise when they said when you don't have to think and he just holds the scream. Half of that is the production because he didn't really hold the scream that long in reality, but at the same time, he's still not going to try that 5 nights a week because that takes just the part that he did do takes a whole
By the
lot.
third, fourth night, he's not gonna be able to get to the fifth night
He's
because
not. Yeah, he's not going to be able to hit that note. Yeah, he ain't even going to. He might be lucky to finish, half of the fourth night. Yeah, if he were to try to do it the same every night. And it's like, what you do in the studio is what you do in the studio. What you
well,
do
you
live is
know
what you
how
do
like your
live.
voice would be after like when I go to concerts as a kid and like the next day I'd be talking like because I
Because
was
you screamed your voice
screaming
out.
the
Yeah.
whole night at that fucking show. That's what a lot of singers are like the next morning after
Yeah,
their shows.
yeah. My dad used to love Ric Flair, so he always used to do the woo.
Woo!
So when we'd go to concerts, he would do that incessantly. And my dad's a loud cat, and so I would do it too. And that's whenever I'd blow out my voice. Yeah, as a kid, and I'm like, "What is going on here? Dad
It's
can
all
do
Rick's
it."
fault.
Yeah, it's all Rick's fault, man. Blame it on the Golden Boy. Yeah, it's like I know, right? It's crazy, and it wasn't until I started singing covers for a living, like, because I either had 4 45-minute sets or 3 1-hour sets. And once you can cope with singing those amounts of time periods without and still being able to do it
Those are
again the
good time
following,
periods.
those are,
Condition yourself for 45 to an hour.
yeah, those are really the only time periods, because like anything else, you're screwing yourself, because you're going too far or you're not going far enough. Like you're
Well,
not.
even if you're going to play for 3 hours, condition yourself for 1 hour and then multiply it by three.
Yeah, and then if you're lucky enough to get the 445s, it's still the same amount of time you're actually performing, but you do get an extra break in between.
Well,
And
you let a guitarist have a solo, or hey, if you got a good drummer, do some Moby Dick for a little while
yeah,
and go
yeah,
take a pee.
and see, I got lucky on that too, because like the whole time I was doing covers, I wasn't the lead singer. I was a backup vocalist, so I got to learn harmonies, and that's where most vocalists never get the luxury, because they, for whatever reason, they just don't get the luxury. And that's why I'm thankful for all the time I spent doing covers, because for the longest time I was fuck covers. I ain't doing covers.
Oh,
Fuck that.
same here. I didn't
Yeah, I
really
know
do
people like that
covers
too.
until
Yeah.
2 years
But
ago.
but once I got into a cover band and started getting paid really well, and then learning harmonies, and being able to have the independence of just worrying about the harmony and not being the lead singer, it was so liberating. And then it taught me so much, because then it taught me about how my voice actually works within context of another vocalist, as well as the music itself. And man, it was invaluable. It really was. I couldn't believe it. And then the final thing that taught me the most about singing and how to just work my voice for what I had to work with was listening to R&B music. Because when I got married to my ex-wife, that's all she listened to for the first year we were together. She wouldn't let me play shit on the radio. And
Oh, she liked the booty music, huh?
oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, hell, she had a booty.
Hey,
She had a booty. She had
it's
a
a
booty.
girl thing.
Yeah. And so like after about 6 months, I find myself singing this stuff though. This Jodeci, this what are those other
Oh,
people
that'll
that?
help you to sing like blues helps a guitarist to feel.
Yeah,
When it comes
yeah.
to R&B,
That'll help
the
you.
best singers out there in the last like 30 years
They're the R&B singers.
came from the R&B world.
Yeah, because even if y'all give Sundance Head a listen these days, you'll still hear his R&B influences. Because y'all know who Roy Head was, right? Treat Her Right, the song back in the day. Yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, like I didn't know this until after Roy had passed last year, but I didn't never watch a single one of his videos till after he died, and I watched one of his videos. That dude could dance like nobody's business. He did stuff that I still can't see people doing these days. Like he would do the thing where he'd kick out one leg, drop one behind the other, and he would go all the way to the floor, but not touch his back, and he would pop all the way back up just with the use of his thigh muscles. And it was like, Roy, you really were a badass. And because he used to come in the rehearsal space all the time when it would be me, Rick, Adam, and Ross in Sundance rehearsing, and he would walk in there and he would stare at us all crazy and he'd be like, "You boys ain't gonna make it." And we're like, "Roy, what the hell's the problem?" He's like, "You gotta motherfucking dance. If you ain't fucking dancing, you ain't getting paid." And he would go grab Sundance's mic and he would take it off the stand and start twirling that thing around and start dancing around the rehearsal space. And we're over there just laughing our asses off.
And moving while you perform really
That's
does help a performance, no matter what you're doing, whether you're singing,
absolutely,
whether you're playing
absolutely.
an instrument.
Because
Movement
if you're
helps
just
to
if you're
get into
static,
the groove.
yeah, because if you're static, you're showing a lack of confidence to yourself. You know what I mean? You're not giving yourself like the go
If
ahead.
you're static, you can't possibly be really feeling the groove, because a good groove at worst gets my foot moving.
Yeah, it's gonna
And
get you moving.
if you get the rest of my body moving, you really have a good groove, because
Yeah.
once it goes to my chest or to my head,
Oh man, you
I'm
got me.
feeling it.
You got me. Yep, you got me. Because like we used to do a lot of Dave Matthews in the cover band, and we used to do a lot of his.
Yeah, he had some good groove.
And we used to do a lot of his live show songs. And not the, of course, we would do Crash and Ants Marching and all that stuff off the records, but we would do a lot of his material off his live shows that was just kind of like improv and impromptu, and that shit would get you going right there. Because I remember we would do all along the Watchtower the way he did it, and my God, when it came time for me to hit my solo, I was Jesus reincarnate. Like just because I was feeling it so much,
Yeah,
and
he took a lot of the like same approach like the Dead and Fish
yeah,
would do, where
yeah, yeah,
improv grooving. Like we're
dude,
gonna
like
take this groove and we're just going to
we're going
feel it for
somewhere.
20 minutes.
Yeah, we'll see you on the other side. Yeah, like
Yep.
and it was, and man, for a long time they kicked some ass. I remember the only time I ever met him, I was living down in Houston. I was at Francisco Studios rehearsing with my band, and my singer Joey, he had a buddy that was a limo driver, and it just so happened that night that that buddy of his was driving Dave before the show. And so they stopped at Francisco Studios, and the window rolls down. It's Dave Matthews and Carter sitting in the back of the limo, and we're like, "That's Dave Matthews and Carter Buford. What the fuck?" Like, and they were like, "Hey man, y'all got any good weed? Because if y'all don't,
That would be my first question.
yeah,
Yep.
they asked us. They were like, "Hey man, you got any good weed? Because if you don't, come sit in the car. We got some badass shit." And I was just like, "Am I really about to get smoke weed with Dave Matthews?" I was like, "Dude, I've had
Fuck
some.
yeah.
I've lived some cool fucking stories. Like back when KLOL in Houston used to have this thing called Fall Jam, and every fall they would invite probably 12 or 15 bands. It was a big old festival. And on my 18th, I was 18, working in Guitar Center, and Train, the band Train, was the
Oh,
first
I
band.
love Train.
Yeah, they were the first
Love Train.
act. And when they got off set, their bass player came to our Guitar Center store and he bought him a brand new Gretsch bass guitar. He gave my sales manager his all access pass to the Woodlands Pavilion where the rest of the festival was taking place. So my manager comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, dude," he goes, I can't leave the store. I'm running the store." He goes, "Here, get your ass down to the pavilion and have a good time." And I'm
Nice.
like, and I looked at this thing. I'm like,
Cheers.
Joe, this is an all access pass. He was like, "I know. I got it from the bass player of Train. You can go anywhere you want." And I'm like, I ran to my department. I was like, "Jim, clock off. Take me to the pavilion right now." I was like, "You've got Joe's permission."
I
He
would have gave
told,
him a hug.
no, I paid him. I paid him, and I gave him a hug, and I bought him a big old bag of weed the next day and everything. But like when I got there, my ass not knowing any better, I stood in line by the gates for a while, and then people started looking at me all weird, and then finally one person was like, "Hey man, I don't think you have to wait in line." I was like, "You sure?" He was like, "You don't have to wait anywhere. You can go anywhere in this facility you want. You can go anywhere. You can walk on stage during the middle of the set if you want to, and nobody's going to really say shit to you unless you're causing problems." I was
That
like, "Are
is
you
the pass
serious?"
I want.
Dude,
Yep.
I got to go down. I hadn't met any stars yet, and Lenny Kravitz was a headliner. And I was like, "Okay, that's enough. I'm going to go meet me a fucking rock star." So I walked down fucking hill, walked down backstage, and the only two people standing there were Owen Wilson and Ben Stiller. And I'm like, how ironic.
So
And
you couldn't find a musician, you found two comedians,
well, so
actors.
I was like, "Hey Ben, hey Ben, hey Owen, man, it's a pleasure to meet you guys, man. I really appreciate y'all's work, man. It makes me laugh. It makes my days better, man. Thank you guys. I appreciate y'all." And right then, this roadie come up. He goes, "Gentlemen, follow me." And I was like, I'm part of gentlemen. I'm a gentleman. So I just followed along. And this roadie led us straight into Lenny's dressing room, shut the door behind him, and out comes Lenny in his bathrobe out of the bathroom, sits on his couch. He says, "What's up to Ben? What's up to Owen?" And then Ben whips out this big old blunt. And fucking finally, Lenny asked me, "Hey, Slick, who are you?" I was like, "Oh,
No, and I would imagine Lenny's a toker.
oh, dude, yeah.
He looks like one. I know
he,
tokers.
he's a slick cat. He is. He's a
Oh yeah,
fat.
he's a great musician.
Oh
He's one of the
man,
few that like people have compared to Jimmy, and for good
dude,
reason. I
the
mean,
show
you
he
can't
put
you
on that
can't
night,
totally compare an artist to Jimi Hendrix,
right,
but I do feel like
dude,
he
yeah.
he was like a '90s version of
Because man,
Jimmy.
that night after we got super stoned, and I told him the lie as to why I was even in his dressing room, because he was like, "So who are you? What are you here for? What do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I'm the after hours guitar center emergency rep for the Woodlands Pavilion." I was like, "So if any of
But I
y'all's
got to pass.
I was like, so if any of y'all's gear breaks down and y'all don't have replacements, I've got keys to the store. The store's only 5 minutes down the road, so I'm your guy." And then we started smoking, and I was well beyond my fucking means then because I was so fucking stoned off this weed that Ben Stiller pulled out. And I was like, "Well, hey guys, I better get back out there.
Stiller's a
Just
stoner too, huh?
yeah,
Not surprised.
yeah. I was like, I better get back out and get back to my job, guys, because I've been here for a while. I was just too stoned to keep hanging out like without making a fool of myself. And right before I left the room, Lenny goes, "Hey, Slick, nice move, man," because he knew I was full of shit the whole time. And I was like, "Thanks, Lenny." I was like, "I appreciate it. It was a pleasure meeting you." He's like, "Man, have a good night, bro." And then he came out and he put on one of the most amazing performances because he left the stage. He
Oh, I'd
walked all,
love to see him
he
live.
walked all the way through the fucking seats, all the way up the hill with his wireless and his wireless microphone, and sang and played American Woman, and then did his solo on the way back down. And he was amidst the crowd the whole time.
Yeah, from what I've heard, he's a performer. Like
Oh,
he
dude.
he brings the performance. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to like
He commands.
upping the chord game and not just playing something that has been played in music all the time, but playing it your way.
He commands your ear. He commands your attention and your respect, even if you don't necessarily like him. If you see him live, he commands your everything.
Plus, didn't
Because
he hook up with Lisa Bonet?
oh yeah, they were married for years.
Hey, she was a hottie.
Hell, their daughter's a fucking hottie.
Oh, yeah. You want to talk about beautiful baby? Like that's what happens when you take beautiful people and make a baby.
And you know what I found sad? What I do find sad is that you can have two people when they're young that are gorgeous, and if they're doing well, or if they're well off to do at least well enough to not struggle for things, they're gonna remain pretty, and their kids are gonna remain pretty. But if they start struggling, they're gonna become less attractive people.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and,
they did go through a lot of shit in the 90s. Tabloids alone back then, National Enquirer was still a big
dude,
thing, and
yeah, and
they
put
were
everybody through the
ripping into
ringer.
them.
Yeah, they put everybody through the ringer back whenever the tabloids were still the big thing. Because nowadays people have at least the choice
And
to
really,
not
like
click.
Lisa was like a private kind of person. She was like, "Get out of my face," and
Yep, and
let me just get
Lenny
married
wasn't.
and have a kid, and I'm done with you guys. But they didn't want to leave her alone.
Well, hey guys, I gotta run to Whataburger to pick up the family some food. So
Yeah.
if y'all will excuse me, I'd appreciate it.
It's all
But
good, man.
It's
Oh,
been
shit.
wonderful talking to you guys, man. I really
Great
had
chat,
Grab a
man.
burger
great
for me.
time, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey man, I'll send you one. I'll send you a voucher for one. You're too far away to send the burger.
Oh,
The rats will get it by the time it makes
I
it
will
to
have
you.
to drive to a different state because Whataburger is like way down south for me.
What's the closest Whataburger to you?
It's got to be past New England.
I was gonna say I don't know of any around here, and I'm in New York.
They don't even exist in the top half of the country.
You say past New England like that's a far drive.
It's 7.5 hours for me to get out of New England.
Yeah,
From where
he's
I'm
way
at.
up there.
I'm in Texas.
Well, then you understand. If you were at the
He's
top
in
of
Texas.
Texas, and
It would
you
take
had
him
to go to the
7.5
bottom,
hours. It would take him 7.5 hours to get out of Texas.
Oh no, it takes 12 hours to get out of Texas.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. But here's the deal: Whataburger is like 3 blocks from me right now.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Texas. They're all over the place.
Well,
I used to
Whataburger-
eat there when
Yeah,
I was
they
in
were-
Dallas.
Whataburger was born here, so I mean, yeah, it was born down in Corpus Christi, Texas. And I couldn't believe it when they sold out to the Chicago firm that they sold out to a couple years ago. Because ever since they did, the quality has gone down, the prices have gone up. Whataburger used to be premium fast food.
And it was a monster burger.
Yes, and they never made a mistake on your order. They always double checked everything. You go now, guarantee you, if not every time, every other time, they're gonna forget something. Guaranteed. And
See, for me around here, I'm going with like Five Guys. I think is the one I would go with. Five Guys
Oh,
burgers and fries.
Yeah,
Those
that's
are
a good alternative.
where are you located at, Glenn?
I'm in Jersey, so I'm like right near New York City.
Yeah. Five Guys is good.
Yeah, Glenn's in the middle of the equator.
Yeah, because I know when I was on the West Coast, I would go to Carl's because
Right.
like there was no J and the B's out there, and there was the McDonald's. Who's gonna eat McDonald's in California? Nobody.
Shit, man, I would kill to have a McDonald's next to me right now. Any fast food place.
Right nearby here, I've got Wendy's is over there, Burger King's over there, McDonald's over that way, Taco Bell over here. I mean, I can get to anything I need to get to over here, but it's just certain
but-
chains, like you're
but-
saying, like
but
Carl's,
that
nothing
right
around here.
there,
In and Out, definitely
that's
not
all-
around.
This is all courtesy of all that right there. Yeah. Before
Mine's
COVID
from
started,
Natural Light,
dude,
which is
Natural Light.
verily not as light as they say it is.
Let me put it to you like this, and I know Angie's gonna make fun of me later for it, but whatever. I love her anyways.
Plus,
When
you
it-
saw up your nose at this point. You
I-
can't,
I-
you can't see
right,
any
right.
worse.
Can't get too much worse. Before pandemic started, I was wearing size 32 jeans. I'm wearing size 42 jeans.
Mhm.
It's
I
like
was gonna
that's
say, damn, I got 32s right
yeah, yeah,
now.
yeah. I went up 10 inches over COVID,
Yeah.
and I haven't stepped on a scale since before COVID, and I refuse to, and until I get my ass out and start doing some exercise first, because I fear I weigh over 300 pounds right now, I'm normally at 200 pounds all day every day.
Well, if you
Mhm.
mosh hard enough,
Oh
you
yeah.
can shed off 100 pounds just in
Or,
mosh.
or if I could just break down like I did in the army and just get down with fucking 150 push-ups at fucking every couple of hours and just do 150 sit-ups every couple of hours and do my squats every couple of hours, I'll be back in
Yeah,
fighting
that's
shape
right.
in no time.
You've been trained.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how to
Yeah,
get
you can
myself
always
back to
fall
good.
back to that.
Yeah, I can always get myself back to good. And I mean, I was an athlete growing up the whole time as a kid, so I know how to. I know that I can put in the work. You know what I mean? Like I know I'm capable of it because I've done it many and many and many a day. All right, she says we got to cut.
Yep.
Yeah, good timing.
Good night, you guys.
All right, man.
Oh,
Great chat.
great-
Have a good
great
one.
talk,
Pleasure,
Raj.
man. All right, man. Y'all have a good night, man.
Yep, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yes, sir. It was. I sure agree.
This has been a great edition of Talking Shhh. I said Talking Shhh IT. Remember to go ahead and watch this again on www.youtube.com/Ingified. Highly educational. Make sure you have your notepads and pencils with erasers. Have a
Emphasis
great
on the
evening,
high.
everyone.
There'll be a
Emphasis
quiz
the
at the
high.
end.